My parents frantically called me at 2 in the morning, screaming that my brother was in the hospital and needed $15,000 immediately, or he would die. I replied, "Call your precious daughter," then hung up and went back to sleep. I had no idea that the call from the police station the next morning would reveal a crime that would send my entire family to prison. My name is Imani, and I am 32 years old. As a forensic accountant in Atlanta, I spend my days hunting down hidden assets and exposing fraud for Fortune 500 companies. But to my family, I am nothing but a walking checkbook. I thought I had set boundaries. I thought moving into a high-security building would keep their drama away. I was wrong. The ringtone cut through the silence of my bedroom like a siren. It was my mother, Patricia. I swiped answer, and before I could even say hello, she was screaming. "Imani, listen to me. Marcus is in the emergency room. It is bad. They need $15,000 cash for a specialized procedure, or he is going to die tonight. Send it now. Do not make up excuses." I rubbed the sleep from my eyes. This was the third emergency this month. Last week, it was a loan shark. The week before, it was a car repair. I said, "Mom, take a breath. If Marcus is in the hospital, they have to treat him by law. They do not demand cash up front for life-saving surgery." She shrieked back, "Do not lecture me, you ungrateful girl. We will stick him with the bills later, but they need a deposit. If you do not send it, I will tell everyone at church and everyone in the family that you let your brother die." You know I will do it. I felt that familiar cold anger settle in my chest. For years I had played the role of the dutiful daughter while my sister Jasmine got the praise and my brother Marcus got the bail money. I looked at the city lights of Atlanta through my floor-to-ceiling windows. I said, "Call Jasmine. She is the influencer making all that money, right? Or call Ashley. Let his wife handle his bills. I am done." My mother started cursing, calling me every name in the book, but I did not hear the rest. I pressed the red button ending the call. Then I blocked her number for the night. I tossed the phone onto the duvet, but I knew I would not sleep. They thought I was heartless. They thought I was broke. They thought I was just a mid-level employee struggling to pay rent on a flashy apartment. I pulled my laptop from the nightstand and logged into my secure banking portal. I needed to remind myself of the truth. The screen refreshed, and there it was. $3,842,000. I stared at the comma and the zeros. I was not their victim. I was a millionaire, and I was about to become their worst nightmare. Before I tell you about the police call that changed everything, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to cut off toxic family members to save yourself. Sleep was impossible. The adrenaline from my mother's screaming was still coursing through my veins like ice water. I sat up in the center of my California king bed and pulled my knees to my chest. The silence of my penthouse usually felt like a sanctuary, a fortress I had built against the chaos of my upbringing, but tonight it felt like a tomb. I reached for my phone not to call them back, but to open a locked folder in my gallery. I needed to remember why I had said no. I needed to remember that their emergency was never actually an emergency, it was just a Tuesday. I scrolled past the photos of my recent promotion and stopped at a picture from last November. It was a selfie I took in a hospital bed, a neck brace tight around my throat, and my left eye swollen shut. I had been T-boned by a delivery truck running a red light on Peachtree Street. My sedan was crushed like a soda can. I remembered the metallic taste of blood in my mouth as the paramedics cut me out of the wreckage. My first thought in that ambulance had not been about my safety or my insurance. It had been about calling my mother. I was still that little girl desperate for her comfort. I remembered dialing her number with trembling fingers as the sirens wailed around me. She answered on the second ring, but I could hear music and loud laughter in the background. "Mom," I said, my voice slurring from the shock and the pain. "I was in an accident. I am at the hospital. I think I broke my ribs. I need someone." Her response was not panic, It was not concern. It was annoyance. Imani, really? She huffed into the phone. Right now. We are at Jasmine's influencer launch party. She just hit 100,000 followers. We cannot just leave. It would look bad. Everyone is looking at us. Take an Uber home when you are done. It would look bad. That was the sentence that finally severed the last thread of my devotion. My internal bleeding was less important than my sister's Instagram aesthetic. I lay in that emergency room hallway on a gurney for 6 hours alone while they ate barbecue and toasted to Jasmine's vanity. When I was finally discharged, I took a ride-share home to an empty apartment. They never even called back the next day to see if I was alive. They sent a group text 2 days later asking if I could do their taxes early since I was home recovering anyway. I closed the photo folder and locked the screen. That was the moment I stopped being their daughter and started being their accountant. Just a resource to be mined, a bank account with a pulse. I got up and walked to the kitchen to pour a glass of water. My hand was shaking. Not from fear, but from a rage so old and deep it felt like a part of my DNA. They did not care if I lived or died then, so why should I care if Marcus was in trouble now? My phone buzzed on the marble counter, the sound loud in the quiet kitchen. A single notification light blinking in the dark. It was a voicemail. Not from my mother this time, but from my father, Desmond. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the play button. I knew I should just delete it. I knew it would only be poison. But the need to know the depth of their depravity pushed me forward. I pressed play and put the phone to my ear. His voice was low, slurring slightly, probably from the cheap whiskey he pretended was top shelf. "You are a cold woman, Imani," he growled into the receiver, the venom dripping from every syllable. "Your mother is in tears. You think you are better than us because you have that fancy job and those suits. You are nothing. You are an ungrateful wretch. Listen to me good. If Marcus dies tonight because you were too stingy to help, I will come there and I will kill you myself. Do you hear me? I will end you." I stared at the ceiling as the sun began to bleed through the sheer curtains of my bedroom. It was 7 in the morning. My father's death threat was still echoing in my head like a bad song on repeat. I expected my phone to ring again. I expected another screaming voicemail from my mother or a text from Jasmine calling me a monster for abandoning the family. But when the phone finally buzzed against the marble nightstand, the caller ID did not say Mom or Dad. It said City of Atlanta Police Department. My stomach dropped. A cold sweat broke out on the back of my neck. Had he actually done it? Had my father done something stupid? Or worse, was Marcus actually dead? Had I really ignored a life-or-death situation? I sat up, clutching the sheets to my chest, and swiped answer. My voice was raspy from the sleepless night. "Hello?" A deep, no-nonsense voice responded on the other end. "Is this Imani Jenkins?" "Yes, this is she. Ma'am, this is Officer Reynolds from the 4th Precinct. I am calling regarding an incident that occurred early this morning involving a subject identified as Marcus Jenkins. Is he your brother?" I swung my legs over the edge of the bed, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Yes, he is my brother. Is he okay?" "My mother called me hours ago, saying he was in the hospital. She said he was in critical condition." The officer let out a dry, humorless laugh that sent a shiver down my spine. "The hospital." "No, ma'am. Your brother is not in any hospital. He is currently sitting in a holding cell down here at the precinct. He is physically fine aside from a few bruises he surely earned when he tried to fight the owner of the convenience store he drove through." The words hit me like a physical slap. Convenience store. Drove through. I blinked, trying to process the shift in reality. "Wait, you mean he was in a car accident?" "He was drunk, Ms. Jenkins." Officer Reynolds said, his tone flat and professional. He blew twice the legal limit. He lost control of the vehicle and plowed through the front glass window of a Quick Mart on Simpson Street. Then he proceeded to assault the shop owner who was trying to call 911. That $15,000 my mother was screaming for. It was not for surgery. It was not for a specialist. It was bribe money. They were trying to pay off the shop owner to not press charges before the police arrived. They were trying to cover up a felony and they wanted me to foot the bill. I felt a wave of nausea followed immediately by a burning white-hot rage. They lied. They threatened my life. They guilt-tripped me over a medical emergency that never existed, all to clean up Marcus's mess again. I took a deep breath, my grip on the phone tightening until my knuckles turned white. Officer, I appreciate you telling me this. If he is in custody, why are you calling me? I am not his lawyer, and I am certainly not paying his bail. There was a pause on the other end of the line. I heard the shuffling of papers and the static of a police radio in the background. Ma'am, we are not calling you for bail money. We are calling because of the vehicle involved in the crash. We ran the plates and the registration. I frowned, confusion warring with my anger. Marcus has not owned a car in 3 years. He lost his license after his last DUI. He takes the bus or gets rides from his wife. The officer's voice dropped an octave, serious and accusing. That is the problem, Ms. Jenkins. The car he totaled is a brand new luxury sedan. And according to our records, it is registered to you. Do you want to explain to me why your brother was driving a car registered in your name? Registered to me. The words floated in the air like toxic dust particles. I stood up from the bed, my legs suddenly feeling like they were made of lead. I walked over to the window and pressed my forehead against the cool glass, staring down at the waking city of Atlanta. There had to be a mistake. I am a forensic accountant. I check my credit report every month. I have alerts set up for any suspicious activity. There was no way Marcus could have purchased a vehicle in my name without me knowing. I said, Officer Reynolds, that is impossible. I drive a 5-year-old SUV. I have not purchased a new vehicle in years, and I certainly would not buy a luxury sedan for a man with a suspended license. You need to check your records again. The rustling of papers stopped. Ma'am, I am looking at the registration right now. It is a 2024 model purchased 2 weeks ago from a dealership in Buckhead. The financing is in your name. The insurance policy is in your name. And according to the paperwork found in the glove box, you listed Marcus Jenkins as an authorized driver. My knees finally gave out and I sank onto the plush carpet of my bedroom floor. 2 weeks ago. I thought back. I had been overwhelmed with a massive audit at work. I had ignored a few alerts on my personal email thinking they were spam. I realized with a sick, sinking feeling that my mail still went to my parents' house sometimes. Official documents, tax forms. They had my social security number. They had my birth certificate. They had everything they needed to become me. It was not just Marcus. He was too disorganized to pull off a financing scheme like this alone. He needed a co-conspirator. My mother. She must have forged my signature. She must have handed over my personal information to the dealership, probably smiling that charming church lady smile and saying her daughter was too busy to come in person. They stole my identity. They ruined my credit score. And then they handed the keys to a drunk and let him loose on the city. The rage that had been simmering since the 2 a.m. phone call boiled over into something cold and sharp. This was a felony. This was fraud. They did not just want my money, they felt entitled to my entire existence. They were willing to burn down my life to keep Marcus warm. I took a deep breath, my voice trembling with a mixture of fury and fear. Officer, I did not sign those papers. I did not authorize that purchase. My identity has been stolen. My brother, and whoever helped him, committed fraud. The officer's voice hardened, losing the professional courtesy he had started with. Ms. Jenkins, that is a serious accusation. Right now, from where I am sitting, it looks like you bought your brother a car, and now that he has crashed it and assaulted a store owner, you are trying to distance yourself to save your own skin. The insurance company is already involved. The shop owner is pressing charges. I gripped the phone tighter. I am telling you the truth. I will come down there right now and prove it. I will bring handwriting samples. I will bring my work logs to show I was in the office when that car was bought. You better bring more than that, the officer warned, his tone dropping to a low threat that made the hair on my arms stand up. Because right now, you are the registered owner of a weapon used in a crime. If you cannot prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that you had no knowledge of this purchase and that you did not give him the keys, you are not just a victim, Ms. Jenkins. You will be charged as an accomplice to reckless endangerment and insurance fraud. You have 1 hour to get down here before I issue a warrant for your arrest, too. I pulled my vintage trench coat tighter around my frame as I stepped through the glass doors of the 4th precinct. The air inside smelled of stale coffee and floor wax. It was a smell I associated with bad choices and desperate people. I spotted my family immediately. My parents, Desmond and Patricia, were huddled together on a metal bench near the vending machines, looking small and defeated. But standing right in the center of the lobby, pacing back and forth in fuzzy slippers and pajama pants, was Ashley. My white sister-in-law looked like she had rolled out of bed 5 minutes ago. Her hair was a bird's nest of tangles, and she was wearing a stained hoodie that I recognized as one I had bought Marcus for Christmas 3 years ago. As soon as the door clicked shut behind me, Ashley's head snapped up. Her eyes narrowed and she charged across the linoleum floor. She did not ask if I was okay. She did not ask about the identity theft. She slammed her hands against my chest, shoving me back a step. This is all your fault!" She shrieked, her voice cracking with hysteria that drew the attention of every officer in the room. "Marcus is in a holding cell right now because of you. If you had just sent the money when Patricia called, none of this would be happening. He would be home. He would not be facing assault charges. You selfish witch." I brushed her hands off my coat as if they were covered in mud. I kept my voice low and icy, refusing to match her energy. "Do not touch me, Ashley. Marcus is in a cell because he drove drunk and beat up a shopkeeper. He is in a cell because he stole my identity to buy a car he could not afford. Do not dare put this on me." Ashley laughed, a high-pitched manic sound. "Stole. Please. We all know you helped him. You just got cold feet when he crashed. You think you are better than us because you have a salary and a downtown apartment, but you are just as trashy as the rest of us. You just hide it better. Look at you coming in here all high and mighty while your brother rots. He has kids, Imani. My kids. They need their father, and you are too cheap to help him." I stepped around her, refusing to engage in her delusion any longer. I needed to speak to the sergeant. I needed to file the report and clear my name before the DA decided to charge me as an accomplice. But Ashley grabbed the strap of my handbag, yanking me back with surprising strength. It was a Birkin. A legitimate matte alligator Birkin I had treated myself to after closing a $10 million fraud case last year. To anyone who knew luxury, it was a $50,000 asset. To Ashley, it was just a bag. She sneered, her fingers digging into the expensive leather as she tried to wrestle it from my shoulder. "Don't act like you are broke. Don't lie to me. I saw the receipt hanging out of your purse at Easter. You spent hundreds on this ugly thing just to look rich while we struggle to buy groceries. You have money for your fake designer vanity projects, but you cannot spare a dime for family. You are pathetic, trying to look like something you are not." My father, Desmond, stepped between us before I could yank my bag free from Ashley's grip. He did not push her away to protect me or to de-escalate the violence. He simply guided her back to the bench like a shepherd tending to a wayward sheep, and then turned his dark, heavy eyes on me. He gripped my elbow with a strength that was designed to bruise. "Come with me," he said. It was not a request. It was a command. He marched me to a corner near the water fountain, away from the prying eyes of the desk sergeant and the sobbing of my mother. The fluorescent lights hummed above us, casting deep shadows over his face. I waited for him to ask if I was okay. I waited for him to apologize for his wife stealing my identity or his daughter-in-law assaulting me in a police station. I waited for even a flicker of paternal instinct. Instead, he looked at me with cold calculation. "You need to fix this, Imani," he said, his voice low and rough. "Marcus cannot go down for this. You know the system. You know what they do to black men in Georgia. This is his 3rd strike. If he catches a felony charge for the assault on top of the DUI and the theft, he is looking at 10 years minimum. He has a family. He has a son. Ashley cannot raise those kids alone." I stared at him, feeling the blood drain from my face. "And what about me, Dad? I have a life. I have a career. I have a professional license that will be revoked instantly if I am convicted of a felony. I lose everything. You are smart, he hissed, leaning in close so only I could smell the stale tobacco and nervous sweat on him. You are a forensic accountant. You know how to talk to these people. You have a clean record, not even a speeding ticket. If you tell them you were driving, if you tell them Marcus was covering for you because you were panicked, they will go easy on you. It will be probation. A fine. I will pay the fine. But you have to take the fall. You are strong, Imani. You can handle a mark on your record. Marcus is weak. He will break in prison. You owe him this. You have had it easy while he struggled. The room seemed to tilt on its axis. He was asking me to destroy my career, to commit perjury, to become a criminal just to save the man who stole my identity and crashed a car bought in my name. He did not see me as his child. He saw me as a shield, an expendable asset to be used up and thrown away to protect his golden boy. He was willing to sacrifice my future to save Marcus from the consequences of his own actions. The pain I expected to feel did not come. The heartbreak I had been nursing for years evaporated in the heat of his audacity. Instead, a dry rattle started in my chest. It bubbled up through my throat, escaping my lips before I could stop it. A laugh. A cold, sharp laugh that sounded like glass breaking in the quiet lobby. I looked him dead in the eye and asked the only question that made sense. Are you joking or are you drunk? I turned my back on my father, leaving him standing there with his mouth open. He looked small, suddenly stripped of his power by a daughter who no longer feared him. I walked straight to the front desk, my heels clicking a rhythm of war on the tile floor. I did not ask for permission. I asked for the detective in charge. When Officer Reynolds appeared looking tired and annoyed, I did not give him a chance to lecture me again. I placed my laptop on the counter and opened a video file. This is security footage from my building lobby, I said, my voice steady and loud enough for my family to hear from the benches. Time-stamped yesterday at 6 in the evening. You can see me entering the elevators. I did not leave my apartment until you called me this morning. The doorman log confirms it. I was not driving that car. I was nowhere near Simpson Street. Reynolds leaned in, watching the screen. He grunted a non-committal sound, but I saw the shift in his eyes. He knew I was telling the truth. I pulled a folder from my bag. And here's the affidavit from the dealership proving the loan application was signed electronically while I was in a video conference with clients in London. My internet protocol address logs match my office, not the dealership. This is identity theft, Officer Reynolds. Grand larceny, fraud, and I am pressing full charges against Marcus Jenkins. My mother gasped from across the room, a sound like a dying animal. Ashley started screaming again, but I tuned her out. I signed the complaint forms with a flourish, the pen digging into the paper. I was not just clearing my name. I was setting the house on fire. Officer Reynolds looked at me, then at the weeping family in the corner. He nodded slowly, respect, replacing the earlier suspicion. He picked up his radio and muttered a code I did not recognize. A moment later, the heavy door to the back offices opened. It was not just a beat cop this time. It was the watch commander, a burly man with silver bars on his collar. He marched straight past me and walked up to where Marcus was slumped in a chair waiting for his bail hearing. The room went silent. Even Ashley stopped her histrionics. Marcus looked up, a smirk playing on his bruised lips, thinking perhaps his father's plan had worked, thinking Big Sister had come to save him again. The commander pulled a fresh pair of handcuffs from his belt. Marcus Jenkins, stand up. You are being charged with additional counts of identity theft, first degree, and financial transaction card fraud. The metallic click of the restraints was the loudest sound in the world. My father lunged forward, his face purple with rage, but two officers blocked his path. Marcus looked at me, his eyes wide with betrayal and fear. But I did not look away. I did not flinch. I just watched. I watched the handcuffs click around Marcus's wrists and felt nothing but a cold, hollow satisfaction. But my mother did not share my sentiment. The sound of that metal locking triggered something feral in her. Patricia Jenkins, the woman who wore hats to church and judged neighbors for their lawn maintenance, let out a scream that sounded like a banshee. She did not run to her son. She ran at me. Her eyes were wide and bloodshot, her face twisted into a mask of pure hatred. "You devil!" she shrieked, her nails aimed directly for my face. "You are evil. You are sending your own brother to prison." I braced myself, ready to catch her wrists, but I did not have to. Two officers intercepted her, grabbing her arms before she could make contact. She thrashed against them, kicking and spitting, completely losing the composure she had spent a lifetime cultivating. It was a scene straight out of a reality show, but this was my life. This was the woman who gave birth to me. "Calm down, ma'am, or you will be joining him in a cell," one of the officers barked, struggling to hold her back. She ignored him. Her eyes were locked on mine, burning with a rage that terrified me more than my father's quiet threats. "How dare you!" she spat, saliva flying from her lips. "After everything we did for you, we put clothes on your back, we fed you, and this is how you repay us, by destroying the family, by ruining Marcus's life over a car. It is just a car, Imani. He is flesh and blood." I stood my ground, smoothing the lapel of my trench coat. "It was never just a car, Mom," I said, my voice cutting through her hysteria. "It was my identity. It was my credit. It was my life. You stole from me to give to him. You chose him over me again, and now you are facing the consequences." She stopped struggling, but the venom in her voice intensified. "Consequences. You do not know consequences yet. You think you are safe because you have money and lawyers. You think you can just walk away from us. You are wrong." The officers began to drag her back toward the bench, but she planted her feet, fighting them every inch of the way. She looked around the precinct, ensuring she had an audience, ensuring everyone heard her pronouncement. "I gave you life, and I can take it back," she screamed, her voice echoing off the walls. "You are dead to me. Do you hear me? You are no daughter of mine. And I will make sure everyone knows it. I will go to the church. I will go to the papers. I will tell the whole world that you are a heartless, ungrateful monster who abandoned her family when they needed her most. I will ruin you, Imani. I swear on the Bible, I will ruin you." As the officers ushered my screaming mother out of the lobby, the silence that followed was heavy and suffocating. But it did not last long. Ashley, who had been watching the scene with wide, terrified eyes, suddenly collapsed onto the metal bench. She buried her face in her hands and let out a wail that was equal parts grief and performance art. She looked up at me, her mascara running down her cheeks in black rivulets. "You happy now?" She choked out, her voice trembling with accusation. "You got your revenge. You destroyed this family. Are you satisfied?" I started to walk away, intending to leave this nightmare behind me, but she scrambled up and blocked my path. Her hands were shaking and she looked desperate. "You cannot just leave. You cannot just walk out of here and go back to your fancy penthouse while I go home to tell my kids their daddy is in jail. How am I supposed to feed them, Imani? Marcus was the provider." I almost laughed. Marcus had not provided anything but debt and stress for years. I knew for a fact Ashley had not worked a real job since she married him, content to live off the handouts my parents bullied out of me. But Ashley was not done. She stepped closer, poking a finger at my chest, her eyes flashing with a sudden greedy resolve. "You owe us," she hissed. "You put him in there. You have that big empty apartment and that six-figure salary while we are drowning. You need to step up. You need to pay our rent and buy the groceries until Marcus gets out. It is the least you can do after ruining our lives. You are the reason my babies are going to starve, so you are going to fix it. I expect a check every month starting today." I looked at her. Really looked at her. I saw the entitlement etched into her features. The way she viewed me not as a person, but as a resource to be exploited. She hated me. She had always looked down on me, making snide comments about my hair or my long work hours. But she had no problem demanding my labor to support her lifestyle. She thought guilt would work. She thought I was still the pushover who just wanted to be liked. I took a slow step forward, invading her personal space until I was uncomfortably close. The smell of stale cigarettes and cheap perfume wafted off her. I lowered my voice to a whisper so soft only she could hear it, a tone that froze the air between us. You think I am stupid, Ashley? You think because I am quiet I do not see what you do. I know you steal cash from my wallet every single time you come to my house for Sunday dinner. I counted the bills before you arrived and I counted them after you left. I know about the $20 here and the $50 there. You call me selfish, but you have been robbing me blind for years. I turned on my heel and walked away from Ashley, leaving her standing there with her mouth agape and her fake victimhood shattering around her. The heavy metal doors of the precinct slammed shut behind me, cutting off the sounds of my mother's wailing and Ashley's pleas. The silence of the morning air hit me like a physical wave of relief. It was done. The bridge was not just burned, it was incinerated, and I was standing on the other side watching the ashes fall. I walked to the curb and pulled my phone from my pocket. My hands were steady now. The trembling from earlier had been replaced by a cold, clinical precision. I scrolled past the missed calls from my aunt and the angry texts from my cousin until I found the contact listed simply as Harrison Legal. Harrison was not just a lawyer, he was a shark in a three-piece suit, the kind of man who ate prosecutors for breakfast and made corporate raiders cry. I paid him a retainer that cost more than my father made in a year, and today I was going to get my money's worth. He answered on the first ring. Imani. To what do I owe the pleasure at this hour? I did not waste time with pleasantries. I need you to execute the contingency plan, Harrison. Protocol scorched earth. There was a brief pause on the line, the sound of a pen tapping against a mahogany desk. You mean the filing we prepared against your brother regarding the identity theft? No. I said, my voice flat and hard. I mean everything. I want the identity theft charges pressed to the fullest extent of the law. I want the civil suit for the damages to my credit score filed by noon. And Harrison, I want you to exercise the clause on the property deed. Harrison stopped tapping his pen. The property deed. You mean the house your parents are living in? The one you bought through the shell company 5 years ago when they were foreclosed on? Yes, that one. They have been living there rent-free, thinking some anonymous investor saved them out of the kindness of his heart. They think they are secure. They think they have a home. I want you to serve them with an eviction notice. Immediate effect. Breach of contract. Use whatever legal jargon you need to use to get them out. Imani, he said, his voice dropping to a tone of professional caution. I need you to be sure about this. If we pull that trigger, we are not just talking about legal trouble. We are talking about putting your elderly parents and your sister-in-law and her children on the street. They have no savings. They have nowhere to go. They will be homeless. I looked back at the precinct doors, thinking of the way my father tried to make me a criminal. Thinking of my mother screaming that I was dead to her. Thinking of Ashley stealing from my purse while eating my food. I watched a police cruiser pull out of the lot, sirens blaring, and I felt absolutely nothing for the people inside that building. I gripped the phone tighter and delivered the verdict. That is the purpose, Harrison. Do it. I thought serving my parents with an eviction notice was the nuclear option, but I underestimated the power of a desperate influencer with a ring light and a Wi-Fi connection. By noon the next day, my phone began vibrating so hard against my mahogany desk it nearly rattled off the edge. It was not calls or texts this time. It was tag notifications, hundreds of them rolling in like a digital tsunami. I unlocked my screen and saw my sister Jasmine's face filling my feed. She was live on Instagram broadcasting to her 200,000 followers. She looked impeccable as always, with her perfectly laid edges and a single strategically placed tear rolling down her cheek. The caption read, "The truth about my heartless millionaire sister." I plugged in my headphones and watched the performance. Jasmine was sitting in her white and beige living room, speaking in that breathy, hushed tone she used when she wanted to sell diet tea or garner sympathy. "You guys know I try to keep it positive here," she whispered, wiping her eye with a tissue. "But I am just broken today. My brother Marcus is suffering. He is alone and in pain, and we are doing everything we can to save him. But we hit a wall named Imani. She held up a picture of me from my LinkedIn profile. It was my professional headshot where I looked confident and successful. This is my big sister. She is a forensic accountant for one of the biggest firms in the city. We found out she has been hiding millions. Literally millions of dollars while our parents struggle to pay their mortgage and Marcus fights for his life. We begged her for help last night. We just needed a tiny fraction of what she hoards to get him the care he needs. And do you know what she did? She laughed. She hung up on our mother. She called the police on us for trying to save our brother. I watched in horror as the comments section exploded. People I had never met were calling me a monster. They were calling for my job. They were calling for my address. Hashtag boycott Imani was already starting to trend locally. Jasmine was not just lying, she was weaponizing her audience. She carefully omitted the fact that Marcus was in a jail cell for a DUI, not a hospital bed. She left out the part about the identity theft. She painted a picture of a greedy corporate climbing sister stepping on the necks of her poor saintly family. I felt a cold sweat prickle along my hairline. This was not just family drama anymore. This was a direct attack on my livelihood. In my line of work, reputation is everything. Clients trust me with their darkest financial secrets because I am discreet and ethical. If the public believed I was a fraud who let her own brother die while sitting on a dragon's hoard of gold, I was finished. I was about to screenshot the video for my lawyer when my office line blinked red. The caller ID displayed a name that made my blood run cold. It was the managing partner, the big boss, the man who barely knew my name unless I was bringing in a 7-figure fee. I picked up the receiver, my hand trembling slightly. "Hello, sir." His voice was clipped and devoid of its usual warmth. "Imani, we need to talk. I am getting emails. Disturbing emails linking our firm to some very ugly allegations circulating on social media. We need to discuss the firm's image immediately." The view from the 42nd floor of the partner's office usually made me feel invincible. Atlanta looked like a circuit board of lights and promise from up here. But today, as I stood before the mahogany desk of Arthur Sterling, the city looked like a shark tank. He turned his laptop around to face me. My sister's tear-stained face was paused on the screen, frozen in a moment of calculated agony. The view count was climbing by the second. "We represent Banks Imani." Arthur said, his voice low and devoid of the mentorship warmth I was used to. "We represent hospitals, charities. Our integrity is our currency. I cannot have clients thinking my lead forensic accountant is embezzling family funds to buy Birkin bags while her brother dies. The board is asking questions. Major clients are asking questions." I straightened my blazer. I did not apologize. I did not cry. I switched into professional mode. The mode that terrified criminals and saved corporations. "I know how this looks, Arthur, and I know how to fix it. But I cannot do it from this desk. If I am here, I am a liability. If I am gone, I am a private citizen settling a personal dispute." Arthur raised an eyebrow. "What are you suggesting?" "Suspend me." I said the words tasting like ash. "Put me on administrative leave. Make it look real. Revoke my badge access. Have security escort me out. Issue a statement that you are investigating the claims. I need my family to think they won. I need them to think I am vulnerable. When a predator thinks the prey is wounded, they get sloppy. They make mistakes. And when they make a mistake, I will bury them." Arthur studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. 2 weeks. Paid. But off the books. Officially, you are pending investigation. Fix this, Imani. Or do not come back. 10 minutes later, I was walking through the glass lobby holding a cardboard box filled with personal effects. I made sure to slump my shoulders. I let my hair fall messy around my face. I looked like every corporate nightmare come to life. The receptionist whispered behind her hand as I passed. The security guard, who usually greeted me with a smile, looked at the floor. I walked out into the humid Atlanta afternoon, feeling the eyes of the world on my back. I walked to my car, throwing the box into the passenger seat, with a little more force than necessary. I slumped against the steering wheel, covering my face with my hands, just in case anyone was watching. Just in case Jasmine had sent one of her little spies to document my downfall. I held the pose for a full minute, breathing in the smell of leather and expensive perfume. Then I sat up. The defeat vanished from my face, replaced by a cold, hard smile. They wanted a show, I gave them a show. Now they would think I was desperate. They would think I was broken. My phone chimed with a priority notification. It was a text message. I expected my lawyer. I expected the bank. But the name on the screen made my blood run cold. It was Jasmine. The message was short and brutal. I heard about your job. Looks like the internet did its thing. Transfer $50,000 to this account within the hour, and I will delete the video and post a retraction. If not, I have a part 2 ready to upload. And this one talks about what really happened to Grandma. $50,000 to silence a lie. That was the price Jasmine put on my career. I sat in the center of my living room, the city of Atlanta spread out beneath me like a grid of electric nerves. My penthouse was a secret fortress of glass and steel, a stark contrast to the crumbling house my parents refused to leave. They thought I was broken. They thought I was scrambling to find cash. They had no idea I was doing what I did best. Hunting. I cracked my knuckles and woke up my triple monitor setup. My family saw a sister they could bully, but criminals saw a forensic accountant who could find a single missing penny in a billion-dollar ledger. Jasmine wanted to play dirty, so I decided to scrub her finances clean. I did not need a warrant. I did not need a subpoena. Jasmine was sloppy. She used the same password for her online banking that she used for her Netflix account, the same password she had since high school. Princess Jazz 89. I logged into her primary accounts. The screen filled with transactions. Sephora, Revolve, 5-star hotels in Miami, leases on luxury cars she claimed she owned outright. It was a lifestyle built on a house of cards. But where was the money coming from? Influencer brand deals paid well, but not this well. Her income statement showed sporadic deposits of a few thousand here and there. But her spending was consistent and lavish. I dug deeper, tracing the routing numbers of the larger deposits. They were coming from a holding account labeled J Hope Foundation. My eyes narrowed. Jasmine started a nonprofit 3 years ago, supposedly, to help inner-city youth get into arts programs. She held galas. She collected donations at church. She posted photos of herself handing out backpacks once a year. I pulled up the foundation's bank records. It was a classic shell game. Donations flowed in from well-meaning church members, local businesses, and even a few minor celebrities. But they did not flow out to scholarships or art supplies. They flowed directly into Jasmine's personal LLC. I tracked a specific transfer from last month. A $20,000 donation meant for a summer music camp. It was transferred the very next day to a verified account for a cosmetic surgery clinic in Buckhead. I felt a cold smile touch my lips. She was not just a liar. She was a thief. I kept scrolling, building a timeline of theft that went back years. And then I found it, the motherlode. A single massive transfer that made my breath catch in my throat. $100,000. It had hit the foundation account 2 weeks ago. The donor line read St. Jude's Building Fund. She had stolen from the church. She had taken the money meant for the new sanctuary roof and funneled it into her own pocket. I sat there with the evidence of my sister's soul glowing on my monitors. $100,000 stolen from the church building fund. Money meant for a new roof for the community funneled into her vanity. She thought she was untouchable because she had followers. She forgot that followers do not sign the checks. Sponsors do. And sponsors hate a liability. I did not need to post it on Twitter. I did not need to make a reaction video. That was Jasmine's game. My game was precision. I compiled a dossier. Bank statements showing the transfer from the charity account, receipts from the plastic surgeon, invoices for the leased luxury SUV she claimed she bought cash. I redacted my own personal information but left hers crystal clear. Then I looked up her sponsor list. It was easy. She tagged them in every desperate post. Skin Glow Cosmetics, Fit Life Tea, Urban Luxe Fashion. I drafted a single email. Subject line: Financial irregularities regarding your brand ambassador Jasmine Jenkins. I attached the files. I did not add any commentary. The numbers spoke for themselves. I hit send on an encrypted server that bounced my internet address through 3 different countries. It was invisible. It was untraceable. It was lethal. Then I waited. It did not take long. 2 hours later, my phone pinged. A notification from Instagram. Jasmine was going live. I clicked the link. She was in her car this time, the leather seats gleaming under the ring light she probably plugged into the cigarette lighter. She looked manic. Her eyes were bright, too bright. "Hey guys," she chirped, her voice pitching up into that fake sweetness that made my teeth ache. "I just wanted to hop on here and thank you for all the support against my toxic family. We are so close to our donation goal for Marcus. You guys are literal angels." She paused to read comments, blowing a kiss to the screen. "I see you, girl. Thank you for the roses. Anyway, I have a huge announcement. Skin Glow is dropping a new collection, and I have a code for 50% off." She reached for a bottle of serum, holding it up to the camera. But before she could start her spiel, the screen glitched. It froze on her face, her mouth open mid-word. Then it went black. A message popped up in white text against the darkness. "This broadcast has been terminated." I refreshed the page. A new message appeared, one that made the cold knot in my stomach loosen just a fraction. "User not found." Her account was gone, scrubbed, deleted. I leaned back in my chair and took a sip of my wine. The silence in my apartment felt different now. It was not empty. It was victorious. My phone buzzed again. But it was not a notification. It was a text from Jasmine. Just 3 words. "What did you do?" I knew they would come for me. Predictability was the only consistent thing about my parents. When guilt failed, they turned to rage, and when rage failed, they turned to violence. I sat in the climate-controlled silence of my Buckhead penthouse, watching the little red dot on my laptop screen. It was the GPS tracker I had installed on my father's car years ago under the guise of paying for his insurance. The dot was stationary, parked illegally in the fire lane of my old apartment complex on the south side of Atlanta. They thought I still lived in Unit 204. They thought I was still that struggling girl trying to make ends meet in a walk-up with peeling paint and thin walls. They had no idea I had moved 6 months ago. They had no idea I had upgraded to a fortress in the sky. I could picture the scene as if I were standing right there. My mother, Patricia, probably wearing her Sunday hat to look respectable while clutching a can of red spray paint in her manicured hand. My father, Desmond, likely gripping a tire iron he pulled from the trunk, puffing his chest out to look like the patriarch he failed to be. They were not there to talk. They were there to punish. They wanted to vandalize my car. They wanted to paint traitor on my front door. They wanted to break my windows and terrify me into submission, just like they used to do when I was a child, and locked my bedroom door against their screaming. My phone started buzzing with notifications from the Ring doorbell app I had left installed on the old apartment door for the new tenant. I tapped the screen and the video feed loaded. It was chaotic. My mother was pounding on the wood with her fists, screaming my name. "Open up, you ungrateful witch! You think you can destroy your sister. You think you can hide from us. We made you and we can break you." My father was pacing behind her, swinging the tire iron at the porch light, shattering the bulb in a shower of glass. He looked deranged. "Come out here, Imani. Come out and face your father." They were making a spectacle. Neighbors were peeking out of their blinds. Phones were recording from balconies. My parents thought they were teaching me a lesson in humility, but they were actually performing a crime for an audience. They threw the first brick through the living room window. The sound of shattering glass distorted the audio on my phone. My mother cheered, but the door did not open because of me. The door flew open and a man stepped out. He was not me. He was Mr. Henderson, a 6'4" dock worker who worked the night shift and slept during the day. He was wearing nothing but boxer shorts and a look of pure homicidal fury. He did not ask them what they wanted. He did not ask them to leave. He simply held up his phone, which was already connected to 911. I turned up the volume just in time to hear him shout over my mother's confused sputtering. "Yeah, send them now. I got 2 intruders trying to break into my house. And tell the officers to hurry, because if they don't get here in 2 minutes, I am going to handle this myself." My parents froze. The tire iron dropped from my father's hand. My mother looked from the large man to the broken window, realizing too late that they had just broken into a stranger's home. Then the sirens began to wail in the distance, getting louder and closer with every second. I watched the live feed of my parents being shoved into the back of a police cruiser on my laptop screen. It was like watching a reality show finale, only the stakes were my actual life. I should have felt guilty. I should have felt sad. Instead, I felt a cold, clinical satisfaction. They broke into a stranger's home because they thought they owned me. Now they were facing felony breaking and entering charges. Justice was swift, but my phone would not let me enjoy the moment. It buzzed again, vibrating against the glass coffee table like an angry hornet. The caller ID flashed a name I had come to loathe. Ashley. I picked up the phone and put it on speaker. I did not say hello. I just waited. "You think you are winning, do not you?" Ashley hissed, her voice trembling with a mix of rage and terror. "Patricia just called me from the squad car. You set them up. You let them walk into a trap. You are sick, Imani." I took a slow sip of my espresso. "They broke into a house, Ashley. I did not make them do that. They made their own choices, just like Marcus did." "Choices," she spat. "You want to talk about choices. Let us talk about when you were 22. Let us talk about that trip to the clinic." I froze. When I was 22, I had emergency surgery to remove a cyst from my ovary. It was terrifying and painful. I had almost lost my ability to have children. My mother knew. Ashley knew. But in their twisted version of history, it was something else entirely. "I know what you told people," Ashley continued, her voice dripping with malice, "but I am going to tell the truth, or at least my version of it. I am going to call Pastor Jenkins. I am going to call the church elders. I am going to tell them you had an abortion, Imani. I will tell them you killed a baby because it was inconvenient for your precious career. In this community, that is social suicide. You will be shunned. The church ladies will spit on your shadow. You will be nothing." It was a lie. A dirty, vicious lie designed to attack my character in the one place that still held some sway over my reputation. She knew the truth, but she did not care. She wanted to hurt me. She wanted to humiliate me. She wanted money, and she was willing to destroy my soul to get it. I sighed, setting my coffee cup down. "You are playing a dangerous game, Ashley. You are threatening me with a lie, but I do not need lies to destroy you. I have facts." I tapped my screen, opening a folder labeled Leverage. I had hired a private investigator months ago when I first suspected Marcus was stealing from me. I wanted to know where the money was going. I found out it was not just gambling, it was not just drugs. It was hush money, but not for Marcus. For Ashley. "Check your messages," I said, my voice low and calm. There was a pause, then the chime of a text notification on her end. "What is this?" she asked, her voice wavering. "Open it." Silence stretched for 10 seconds. Then I heard a sound like a wounded animal. A gasp that sucked all the oxygen out of the room. It was a photo. High resolution, taken at night, but clear as day. It showed a car parked behind a secluded motel on Old National Highway. The windows were fogged, but the faces in the front seat were undeniable. Ashley was leaning over the center console, her hands tangled in the hair of the driver. And the driver was not Marcus. It was Dante, Marcus's best friend. The man Marcus called his brother. The man who was currently babysitting her children while she tried to blackmail me. "That is Dante, isn't it?" I said mercilessly. "Imagine how Marcus will feel sitting in that jail cell alone and angry when he sees this. He has a temper, Ashley. We both know that. Imagine what he will do when he finds out his wife and his best friend have been laughing at him behind his back while he rots in prison. Please, she whispered, the arrogance gone replaced by pure terror. Please, Imani, do not. He will kill me. He will kill us both. I leaned back in my chair, smiling at the ceiling. I am not going to send it to him yet. But you are going to listen to me very carefully. Because your life now belongs to me. I walked into the glass-walled conference room of Harrison and Partners on the 44th floor. The air conditioning was set to a crisp 68 degrees, a sharp contrast to the humid Atlanta heat outside. Harrison was waiting for me, a thick file resting in the center of the polished obsidian table. He did not smile. He knew why I was here. We need to discuss the property on Abernathy Road, he said, sliding the file toward me. Your parents' residence. I opened the folder. The deed was right on top, but it did not list Desmond and Patricia Jenkins as the owners. It listed a shell company, Genesis Real Estate Trust. My parents tell everyone they own that house, I said, running my finger over the legal seal. They tell the church folk they paid it off years ago. They brag about their equity. But we know the truth, do we not, Harrison? He nodded solemnly. 5 years ago they defaulted. The bank was days away from putting it on the auction block. They were going to lose everything. You stepped in. You directed me to establish the trust, purchase the note, and lease it back to them for $0 a month. I remembered that day vividly. I remembered my mother crying at the kitchen table, terrified of being homeless. I remembered my father pacing, blaming the economy, blaming his boss, blaming everyone but his own gambling debts. I had just gotten my first big bonus as a forensic accountant. I could have bought a condo in Midtown. Instead, I bought their safety. I set it up anonymously because I knew their pride would never let them accept it from me. I let them believe a clerical error or a divine miracle saved them. For 5 years they have lived in a house I own. I said, my voice quiet but steady. For 5 years they have slept under a roof I provided. And for 5 years they have called me selfish. They have called me stingy. They have told the world I abandoned them while I was literally keeping the rain off their heads. They sat at my dinner table and insulted me while living in my charity. Harrison leaned forward, his expression grave. If you proceed with this, Imani, there is no going back. This is not just a legal maneuver. This is a declaration of war. They will be on the street in 72 hours. They have no credit to rent a new place. They have no cash reserves. I looked at the signature line on the eviction order. I thought about Marcus driving my car into a store. I thought about Ashley stealing from my purse. I thought about my mother screaming that I was dead to her in the police station. They had taken my kindness and sharpened it into a weapon to use against me. They thought my silence was weakness. They were about to learn that my silence was the only thing protecting them from the cold. I picked up the heavy fountain pen. The ink was black as night. I did not hesitate. I did not tremble. I pressed the nib to the paper and signed my name. Evict them, I said, pushing the paper across the desk. Throw them out. I sat in my car down the street, watching the spectacle through tinted windows. I needed to see it happen. I needed to witness the physical dismantling of their delusion. 2 Fulton County Sheriff deputies walked up the driveway of the house on Abernathy Road. They walked with the heavy, purposeful stride of men who delivered bad news for a living. In their hands, they carried a staple gun and a sheet of paper that glowed neon orange in the Atlanta afternoon sun. It was the color of emergency, the color of the end. My father, Desmond, opened the door before they could knock. He was wearing his velvet smoking jacket, holding a cigar like he was the lord of the manor. I saw his jaw drop when the deputy handed him the paperwork. I saw him point a shaking finger at the officer, probably threatening to sue, probably claiming he knew the mayor or the governor. But the deputy just stepped past him and slapped the notice right onto the solid oak front door at eye level. The sound of the staple gun echoed down the quiet street. Thwack, thwack, thwack. Notice to vacate. Foreclosure proceedings finalized. 72 hours. My mother, Patricia, ran out behind him. Even from this distance, I could see her clutching her chest in theatrical horror. She grabbed the paper, trying to rip it down, but the heavy-duty staples held fast. They were screaming at each other now. Desmond blaming Patricia, Patricia blaming the bank. They had no idea the bank was not involved. They had no idea the landlord they had never met was sitting a block away watching their kingdom crumble. They had 3 days. 3 days to pack 30 years of hoarding and pretense into cardboard boxes. 3 days before the locks changed and their possessions hit the curb. I drove away before they could spot me. I felt a lightness in my chest I had not felt since I was a child. The cord was cut. The leash was removed. I went back to my penthouse and poured a glass of water, standing on the balcony, looking out over the city skyline. I was ready for the fallout. I was ready for the rage. I expected my phone to melt from the heat of their angry texts, but when my phone rang 20 minutes later, it was not a scream. It was a melody. The caller ID said, "Mom." I stared at it for a long moment. Curiosity warred with caution. Why was she calling? Why wasn't she screaming? I swiped answer but stayed silent, waiting for the explosion. Instead, I heard a voice I had not heard in a decade. It was soft. It was sugary. It was the voice she used when I got straight A's in elementary school, before she realized Jasmine was prettier and Marcus was a boy. "Imani, baby." "Are you there?" she cooed. "Oh, thank God. Listen, I know we have had our differences lately. We have all been so stressed with Marcus, and everything at the police station got out of hand. But your father and I were just talking, and we miss you. We miss our baby girl. We realized we have not sat down as a family in so long. Why do not you come over for dinner tonight? I am making your favorite pot roast and collard greens. Just the 3 of us. Like old times. Come home, Imani. We have a surprise for you." I pulled my SUV into the driveway of the house on Abernathy Road. The neon orange eviction notice was gone, scraped off the oak door, leaving behind only a few jagged staples and a patch of lighter wood where the finish had been scratched away. They had tried to erase the reality of their situation, just like they had tried to erase me for years. I checked my phone one last time, ensuring my location was shared with Harrison, my lawyer. I tapped the voice recorder app and slid the phone back into my purse. I was walking into the lion's den, but this time I was the one with the whip. My mother, Patricia, opened the door before I could even knock. She was wearing a floral apron over her church dress, her face beaming with a smile that did not quite reach her eyes. "Imani, baby, come in, come in. The house smells just like Sunday dinner, does it not? I made your favorites." I stepped into the foyer. The house was spotless. The air was thick with the scent of seasoned beef and collard greens, the kind of smell that usually signaled safety and love. But tonight, it smelled like desperation. My father, Desmond, was sitting in his usual armchair, but he stood up immediately when he saw me. He did not scowl. He did not yell. He walked over and awkwardly patted my shoulder. "Good to see you, girl. Glad you could make it. Let us put all that ugliness behind us. Family is family, right?" The most disturbing part was Ashley. She walked out of the kitchen wiping her hands on a dish towel. The woman who had tried to assault me at the police station just days ago was now smiling at me like we were best friends. She even pulled out a chair for me at the dining table. "Here, sit down, Imani. You look tired. You work too hard. Let me get you a plate." I sat down, keeping my purse in my lap, my hand resting near the hidden phone. I watched them move around the table, like actors in a bad play. They were performing normalcy. They were pretending that Marcus was not in jail, that I had not evicted them, and that we were just a happy family enjoying a meal. It was terrifying. Patricia heaped a massive serving of pot roast onto my plate. "Eat up, baby. You are too thin. We need to keep your strength up. We have a lot to talk about later, about the future, about how we can fix things for everyone." Desmond walked over to the sideboard where a bottle of expensive red wine was already open. It was a bottle I had given them 3 Christmases ago, one they had saved for a special occasion. He picked up the heavy crystal goblet meant for me. I watched his hands. They were shaking slightly. He poured the dark red liquid until it nearly reached the rim. A toast, he announced, bringing the glass over and setting it down in front of me with a little too much force. To new beginnings. To forgiveness. Drink up, Imani. It is the good stuff. I reached for the glass, playing my part. I brought it to my lips, intending to fake a sip just to keep the peace until I could spring my trap. But as the rim neared my nose, the aroma hit me. It was not the oak and berry scent of aged Merlot. Cutting through the bouquet of the wine was a sharp chemical tang, a smell like bitter almonds and bleach. It was faint, but to a woman who had spent her career sniffing out rot, it was unmistakable. My hand froze in midair. The crystal goblet felt heavy and cold against my fingertips, but my skin was burning. I looked over the rim of the glass at the 3 people sitting around the table. My mother Patricia was gripping her napkin so tight her knuckles were white. My father Desmond had a bead of sweat rolling down his temple despite the cool air conditioning. And Ashley was staring at my throat, watching for the swallow like a vulture waiting for a pulse to stop. They were not just desperate, they were deadly. I lowered the glass slowly. I saw the flash of panic in my mother's eyes. "Drink up, baby," she urged, her voice cracking just a little. "It will help you relax. You have been so tense lately. Just one sip." Under the table, I felt a wet nose nudge my knee. It was Buster, the family's old pit bull mix. He was the only living thing in this house that had never lied to me. He whined, smelling the pot roast, begging for a scrap. An idea formed in my mind, cold and terrible. I feigned a spasm. My hand jerked and I let the heavy glass slip from my fingers. It hit the hardwood floor with a shatter that sounded like a gunshot. The dark red wine splashed everywhere, soaking the hem of the white tablecloth and pooling on the polished wood. "Oh my God," I cried out, standing up and backing away. "I am so clumsy. I am so sorry." Desmond jumped up, but he was not looking at the mess. He was looking at the wine with a terrifying intensity. "Do not touch it," he shouted. "Do not touch the glass!" But he was too slow. Buster, seeing an opportunity, lunged for the puddle. He lapped up a mouthful of the wine mixed with the chemical agent before anyone could stop him. "No," Ashley screamed. It happened in seconds. The dog stopped licking. He let out a high-pitched yelp that turned into a gurgle. He fell onto his side, his legs kicking frantically against the table legs. White foam tinged with pink began to bubble from his jaws. His eyes rolled back in his head. The sound of his claws scratching against the floor was the only noise in the room. My mother covered her mouth with her hands, but she did not move to help the dog. She just stared at the dying animal with a look of pure horror. Not because she loved the dog, but because she knew what that poison was meant to do to me. I watched Buster go still. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it would burst through my chest. If I had taken that sip, that would be me on the floor. That foam would be on my lips. I looked up from the dog to my parents. The mask was off. There was no more pretense of a happy family dinner. There was only the naked, ugly truth of what they had become. I remembered a conversation I overheard Jasmine having on the phone months ago about a policy. A policy with a $2 million payout. I thought she was talking about car insurance. Now I knew better. I stood up straight, my heels clicking on the floor near the puddle of lethal wine. I looked my father in the eye. "You took out a life insurance policy on me, didn't you? You did not just want to evict me or steal from me. You tried to poison me to collect the payout." The silence following my accusation was not the silence of shame. It was the silence of a predator calculating its next move. Desmond did not deny it. He did not look at his wife or his weeping daughter-in-law. He looked at the back door leading to the kitchen. "Come on out, son," he said, his voice flat and terrifying. "She knows." The kitchen door swung open and my heart stopped. Marcus walked into the dining room. He was supposed to be in a holding cell, He was supposed to be in custody, but here he was, wearing the same clothes he had been arrested in, his eyes bloodshot and wild. He held a roll of duct tape in one hand. "You really thought you could keep me locked up, little sister," he sneered, stepping over the body of the dead dog without a second glance. Mom pawned her wedding ring for the bail bondsman. "We are all in this together now." "Get her!" Desmond roared, lunging across the table. He grabbed my wrist with a grip that felt like iron. I tried to pull away, but Marcus was already moving, flanking me from the left. They were going to tie me up. They were going to finish what the wine had started, and they were going to make it look like an accident or a suicide. But they forgot one thing. I was a single woman living in a city that never sleeps, and I never went anywhere defenseless. My free hand dived into my purse. I did not reach for my phone. I reached for the canister of military-grade pepper spray I had bought the day I found out my identity was stolen. I pulled the pin with my thumb and aimed for my father's face. I squeezed the trigger. A jet of orange chemical fog hit Desmond squarely in the eyes. He screamed a guttural sound of pure agony and released my wrist to claw at his burning face. Ashley shrieked and ducked under the table. Marcus lunged for me, but I spun around and sprayed a wide arc in his direction. He choked, coughing violently and stumbling back into the china cabinet. Glass shattered around him. I did not wait to see them recover. I kicked off my heels and sprinted for the front door. The hallway felt miles long. I could hear Marcus roaring behind me, his heavy footsteps thudding against the hardwood floor. "Get back here, you witch!" he screamed. I burst out into the night air, gasping for breath. My SUV was parked 10 yards away. I fumbled for my keys, my fingers slick with sweat and adrenaline. I could hear the front door crash open behind me. I threw myself into the driver's seat and slammed the door. I hit the lock button the split second before a body slammed against the glass. Marcus was there, his face pressed against the window, distorted by rage and the orange residue of the spray. He pounded on the glass with his fist, the sound vibrating through the entire car frame. "You cannot escape!" he screamed, his eyes locking onto mine through the safety glass. "We know where you work. We know where you live. You are never getting away from us." I drove through the red lights of Atlanta like a woman possessed. The image of Marcus smashing his fist against my window was burned into my retinas. My tires screeched as I took the turn onto the highway, not heading toward my sanctuary in Buckhead, but toward the federal building downtown. I knew the local police would treat this as a domestic dispute. They would take a report and issue a restraining order that was nothing more than a piece of paper to men like my father and brother. I needed more. I needed federal intervention. I parked in the visitor lot and ran inside barefoot. My heels were still on the hardwood floor of that house of horrors. The security guards looked at me with alarm. A woman in a silk blouse with no shoes, smelling of pepper spray and fear. I did not care. I flashed my professional credentials. I demanded to see the agent in charge of financial crimes. They put me in an interrogation room. It was gray and cold and smelled of stale coffee. I sat there hugging myself, trying to stop the shivering. I had almost died tonight. My own mother tried to poison me with a glass of Merlot while my father watched. They wanted the insurance money. They wanted to erase me and cash the check. The door opened and a man walked in. He was tall, with broad shoulders and a suit that cost more than my first car. He did not look like a bureaucrat. He looked like a soldier. He placed a file on the table and sat down across from me. "Ms. Jenkins," he said, his voice deep and calm. "I am Special Agent Vance. You are a long way from your office." I looked him in the eye. "My father Desmond Jenkins and my brother Marcus Jenkins just attempted to murder me. They have taken out a fraudulent life insurance policy in my name. They are running some kind of financial scam, and I have evidence of identity theft and wire fraud. I want them arrested. I want them buried under the prison." I expected him to ask for proof. I expected him to tell me to fill out a form. Instead, he opened the file on the table. It was thick, and right on top was a photo of my father meeting with a man I recognized from the news. A known money launderer for a local syndicate. Agent Vance slid the photo toward me. "We know about the insurance policy, Imani. We know about the identity theft. We know about the shell companies your father has been trying to set up using your credentials. We have been building a RICO case against his associates for 18 months. Desmond is a small fish in a very big and very bloody pond. My breath caught in my throat. You knew. You knew he was using my name and you did nothing. We were waiting for him to make a mistake, Vance said, leaning forward, his eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that made me flinch. We were waiting for him to lead us to the supplier. And tonight, he did something we did not expect. He got desperate. He tried to take you out because you are the loose end. You are the only one who can decode his books. He tapped the file with his index finger. We can put them away for the attempted murder, but that is just state time. If you want to destroy the entire network, if you want to make sure they never touch you or anyone else again, we need more. We have been watching your father for a long time. We need your help. I stared at the black and white surveillance photos spread across the cold metal table. My father Desmond looked like a stranger. In one image, he was handing a thick envelope to a man with a neck tattoo in the parking lot of a bowling alley. In another, he was loading crates into the back of a van I had never seen before. Agent Vance tapped the photo with his pen. Your father is not a failed entrepreneur, Imani. He is a mule. For the last 3 years, he has been moving dirty cash for the East Side Syndicate. He takes the cash, cleans it through those shell companies you found, and moves it offshore. I felt the room spin. A mule. My father, the man who lectured me about proper table manners and the importance of appearance, was an errand boy for organized crime. It explained everything. The erratic behavior, the sudden influxes of cash followed by periods of extreme poverty, the desperation to keep up appearances. He was not just bad with money. He was drowning in a criminal underworld he had no business being in. Vance flipped the page, revealing a timeline. We have been tracking the transactions. He uses family members to layer the funds. Your mother's bingo winnings, Jasmine's charity donations, and recently he tried to open accounts in your name. That is why they stole your identity. They needed a clean name. A name with a high credit score and a security clearance to move larger sums without triggering federal flags. I felt sick. They were not just stealing from me, they were framing me. If this had gone on any longer, I would be the one in this interrogation room, in handcuffs, facing federal prison time for money laundering while they played the victims. But one piece of the puzzle still did not fit. I looked up at Agent Vance. But what about the crash? What about Marcus? Why did they call me at 2 in the morning screaming for $15,000? If this is a long-term operation, why the sudden panic? Why the desperation that led to them trying to poison me? Vance sighed and pulled a final photo from the folder. It was a picture of my totaled luxury sedan, the one Marcus had destroyed. The trunk was popped open, revealing a hidden compartment that had been ripped apart. Marcus was doing a run. Vance said, his voice grim. Your father trusted him with a pickup, a bag containing $15,000 in street cash. But Marcus got drunk, he crashed the car, and when the police arrived, the bag was gone. Maybe it was stolen by a bystander. Maybe Marcus hid it. It does not matter. The money was gone. The realization hit me like a physical blow, knocking the wind out of my lungs. The scream on the phone. The threat that Marcus would die tonight. It was never about a hospital. It was never about a surgeon. They needed $15,000 immediately, not to pay a doctor, but to pay back the drug dealers Marcus had lost the money for. They were trying to get me to pay my brother's debt to a cartel before they came to collect it in blood. My phone began to vibrate on the metal table, creating a buzzing sound that echoed like a drill against my skull in the quiet interrogation room. It was not a saved contact. It was a restricted number. I looked at Agent Vance. He did not look surprised. He simply nodded once, his face grim and professional. Answer it, he mouthed, pointing a finger at the device. Put it on speaker. My hand felt cold and detached as I reached for the phone. I tapped the green icon and the speaker button, my breath caught in my throat. Hello? There was no pause, no hesitation. just a voice that sounded like gravel grinding in a concrete mixer. Imani Jenkins. Who is this? I asked, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to sound brave. This is the collection agency, the voice said. But there was absolutely no humor in it. Your brother Marcus had a little accident last night. He misplaced a package of ours. A very expensive package. 15,000 in cash and 35,000 in merchandise. That brings his tab to $50,000. I looked at Vance. He was scribbling furiously on a notepad, signaling for a tech in the hallway to trace the call. I tried to stall, keeping my eyes locked on the agent's pen. I do not know what you are talking about. Marcus is in jail. I have nothing to do with his debts. The laugh on the other end was dry and terrifying. We know where he is. We know he is crying in a cell. But we do not care about him. We care about our money. And we know you are the only one in that pathetic family who has 2 dimes to rub together. We checked your background, Imani. We know about the penthouse in Buckhead. We know about the investments. You are rich. So you are going to pay. I felt the blood drain from my face, leaving me lightheaded. They had run my background. They had done their homework. This was not a random threat from a street thug. This was a targeted extortion from a sophisticated criminal enterprise. I am not paying for my brother's mistakes, I said, my voice hardening with a surge of defensive anger. I am done cleaning up their messes. The voice dropped lower, intimate and deadly, sending a chill straight down my spine. This is not a mess you walk away from, sweetheart. This is a debt, and debts get paid. One way or another. You have 24 hours to drop $50,000 in a duffel bag behind the old church on Martin Luther King Drive. If you do not, we start canceling contracts. First your father, then your mother, and then you. We know you leave your office at 7. We know you take the side exit to avoid the traffic. Do not make us come for you. The line clicked dead. The silence that rushed back into the room was deafening. I stared at the black screen of my phone, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I looked up at Agent Vance, expecting reassurance, expecting him to tell me I was safe in federal custody. But Vance just looked tired. He closed the file and leaned back in his chair, his expression grave. That was a direct threat from the lieutenant of the syndicate. They are not bluffing, Imani. They will kill your family to make a point. And now that they know you are the bank, they have put a target on your back the size of Atlanta. You are not just a witness anymore. You are prey. I left the federal building feeling like a ghost haunting my own life. Agent Vance had offered me a safe house, but I refused. I needed to think. I sat in my car in the secure parking garage, gripping the steering wheel until my hands ached. My phone lit up again. I expected another threat from the syndicate or another plea from my father. But the name on the screen made me pause. Jasmine. I swiped answer, ready to hang up at the first sign of attitude. But there was no attitude. There was only hyperventilating. Imani, please, you have to help me, she sobbed, her voice unrecognizable. They came to my condo. They were waiting in the lobby, men in suits. They told me I have pretty skin. They told me it would be a shame if something happened to it. I felt a flicker of pity despite myself. Jasmine was vain and selfish, but she was not built for this world. She was soft. Where are you? I asked, my voice clipped. I am at the Waffle House on Piedmont. Please come get me. I cannot go home. I cannot go to Mom and Dad. They will not protect me. They only care about the money. I drove there, my eyes scanning every rearview mirror for a tail. I found Jasmine in a booth in the back wearing sunglasses and a hoodie pulled low. She looked small. When she saw me, she practically collapsed into my arms. It was the first time she had hugged me in 10 years without a camera present. They know everything, Imani, she whispered, her hands shaking around a mug of coffee, Mom and Dad. They are not just mules. They are recruiters. They get people in debt and then force them to carry cash. That is how they got Marcus. He owed gambling debts, so Dad made him a driver. I stared at her. My father enslaved his own son to a cartel to pay off debts. It was monstrous. And you? I asked. Did you know? I knew they had money problems, she admitted, tears sliding down her cheeks. I knew they asked me to move money through my charity sometimes. They said it was just for tax purposes. I did not know it was cartel money until today. When those men showed up, they said the debt has transferred. Since Marcus lost the load and Dad is useless, they expect me to work it off. They want me to carry packages on my influencer trips to Dubai and Tulum. I felt a cold fury rising. They were willing to traffic their golden child too. Nothing was sacred. We need to go to the FBI, I said, grabbing her hand. You need to tell them everything. I cannot, she wailed. I am scared. And it is not just Mom and Dad. It is bigger. It is inside the house. What do you mean inside the house? I asked. Jasmine looked up, her eyes wide with terror. She leaned across the sticky table and whispered the words that changed the entire game. It is Ashley. She is not just the suffering wife. She is the handler. She tells Dad where to go. She tells Marcus what to drive. She is the one who talks to the syndicate. Ashley is the one running the family cell. Ashley. My sister-in-law. The woman who wore pajama pants to a police station and cried about feeding her children was a lieutenant for an organized crime ring. It was so absurd it had to be true. It explained the cash that went missing from my wallet. It explained why Marcus was always in debt, but she always had new sneakers. It explained why my parents were terrified of her. She was not just the mother of their grandchildren, she was their boss. I dragged Jasmine out of the booth. We are going back to the federal building. God. And you are going to tell Agent Vance exactly what you told me. Every name, every date, every threat. Jasmine was shaking, but she followed. She had no choice. She was soft, and the world had suddenly become very hard. Back in the interrogation room, Vance listened to Jasmine's confession with a stillness that was terrifying. He looked at me, his expression unreadable. This changes the landscape, Imani. Ashley is the link. If we get her, we get the supply chain. But she is cautious. She won't talk on the phone. We need to catch her in the act of a transaction. We need her to put her hands on the money. I looked at the surveillance photos of my family spread across the metal table. My father the mule, my mother the enabler, my brother the thief, my sister the target, and Ashley the snake. There was no saving them, not in the way a daughter saves a parent. I could not buy them a house and fix this. If I did nothing, the syndicate would kill them. If I helped them escape, they would just find new victims. Prison was a cage, but it was also a shelter. It was the only place they could not hurt anyone else, and the only place the cartel could not easily reach them. I will give them what they want, I said, my voice steady. The syndicate wants $50,000. My father wants to live. Ashley wants to get paid. I will be the bank. Vance shook his head. It is too dangerous. We cannot ask a civilian to facilitate a drop with violent offenders. This is not a tax audit, Imani. These men kill for sport. I am not asking permission, Agent Vance. I am telling you how you are going to close your case. I will set up a meet. I will tell my father I liquidated my assets. I will tell him I am bringing the cash to pay off Marcus's debt. He will bring Ashley because she handles the money, and she will bring the syndicate connection because she needs to clear the books. You will be there, and you will take them all down at once. Vance studied me, searching for a crack in my armor. He did not find one. I was not doing this out of love. I was balancing a ledger. He finally nodded. We will wire you up. We will have tactical teams on the perimeter. But once you send that text, there is no turning back. I pulled my phone from my purse. My hands did not shake. I opened the message thread with my father. The last message from him was a plea for mercy. I typed out the sentence that would end my family as I knew it. I have the $50,000. Cash. Meet me in 1 hour. I pulled my car into the cracked asphalt lot of the 24-hour diner on Martin Luther King Drive. The neon sign above the door flickered with a buzzing sound that set my teeth on edge. Inside, the air smelled of stale grease and old coffee. I spotted my parents immediately in the furthest booth away from the windows. They looked like ghosts of the people who used to lecture me on posture and presentation. My father Desmond was unshaven, his eyes darting around the room like a trapped animal. My mother Patricia, usually impeccable in her church hats, wore a wrinkled tracksuit and looked 10 years older than she had last week. I slid into the booth opposite them. I did not say hello. I placed my heavy leather tote bag on the table between us. The sound of it hitting the laminate surface made them both jump. "Do you have it?" my mother whispered. Her eyes locked on the bag with a hunger that made me sick. "Is the cash in there?" I kept my hand on the bag. "I have $50,000 in unmarked bills just like you asked. But before I hand it over, I want the truth. No more stories about hospitals. No more lies about surgeries. I know Marcus is in jail. I know he crashed my car. So tell me exactly where this money is going." Desmond wiped sweat from his forehead with a shaking hand. "Imani, please not here. Just give us the bag. We have to go." "They are waiting." "Who is waiting, Dad?" "Is waiting." "Who needs $50,000 in cash at midnight?" He looked at me, and for the first time I saw the terror behind his arrogance. He leaned across the table, his voice a harsh whisper. "The people Marcus works for. The people I work for." It was not just money Marcus lost in that crash, Imani. It was product, a lot of it. The car was loaded. When the police impounded it, the syndicate lost the shipment. They hold us responsible. My mother grabbed my wrist, her nails digging into my skin. "They came to the house, Imani. Men with guns. They said if we do not pay the debt by tonight, they will kill Marcus in his cell. Then they will come for us. They know where we live. They know where you work. This is not a game. This is blood money." I looked at them, my parents, the people who were supposed to protect me. They were admitting to trafficking narcotics. They were admitting to working with a cartel. They were admitting that they tried to extort me not to save a life, but to save their own skins from the consequences of their criminal greed. "So there is no doctor," I said, my voice flat. "There is no medical emergency. You just needed me to pay off your drug lords." "Yes." Desmond hissed, tears welling in his eyes. "Yes. Are you happy now? We are in debt to monsters. We need this money to buy our lives back. Now give me the bag before we all wind up dead." I looked at him one last time, etching this moment into my memory. The moment my father ceased to be a parent and became just another criminal I was investigating. I slid the bag across the table. "Take it," I said. "Go save yourselves." They grabbed the bag without a word of thanks, scrambling out of the booth and rushing toward the exit. I watched them go, feeling the cold, hard weight of the recording device taped to my chest beneath my blouse. I tapped the small microphone hidden near my collarbone. "Did you get all of that, Agent Vance?" His voice crackled in my earpiece, clear and grim. "Loud and clear, Imani. We have the confession." I watched my parents scurry out of the diner door, clutching the bag of cash like it was their salvation. I reached for my purse, ready to signal Agent Vance to move in and arrest them before they could leave the parking lot. But before I could stand up, the air in the booth shifted. A scent of expensive vanilla perfume replaced the smell of stale grease and fear. I looked up. Ashley was sliding into the seat my father had just vacated. She did not look like the frazzled mother in pajamas who had screamed at me in the police station. She was wearing a structured blazer and her eyes were cold and clear. She did not look at the door where her husband's parents had just exited. She looked strictly at me. "You gave them 50,000, she said, her voice devoid of the shrill hysteria she usually performed. "That covers the breakage Marcus caused, but it does not cover my fee." I stared at her, confused by the transformation. "Your fee? Ashley, your husband is in jail, and your in-laws are running from a cartel. What are you talking about?" She laughed, a low sound that vibrated in her chest. "You still do not get it, do you, Imani? You think Desmond runs this family. Desmond cannot balance a checkbook without a calculator. He is just a mule. Who do you think sets up the shell companies? Who do you think structures the deposits under $10,000 to avoid federal reporting? Who do you think manages the flow? The realization hit me harder than the pepper spray had hit my father. It was not just that she was involved. She was the architect. My forensic accountant brain started connecting the dots. The small cash withdrawals I noticed years ago. The way she always handled the mail. The way she insisted on using certain banks. You, I whispered. You are the launderer. You are the one washing the money through the landscaping business. Ashley smirked, picking at a chipped fingernail. Finally. I thought you were supposed to be the smart one. Marcus is the muscle, Desmond is the face, but I am the brain. And right now the brain needs a golden parachute. I know you have more than 50,000. I saw the bank alerts on your phone at Christmas. $3.8 million. She leaned across the sticky table, her eyes dead and flat. I want $500,000. Cash. Transferred to a crypto wallet by morning. Or I tell the syndicate that you are the one who tipped off the cops about the car. They will not just kill you, Imani. They will make it slow. I shook my head slowly, trying to keep my voice steady. You are delusional. You are not going to extort me. The FBI is watching this building. Are they? She asked, her smile widening into something predatory. I checked the parking lot. I saw the black van. But they cannot help you right now. Not quickly enough. I felt a hard, sharp pressure against my thigh under the table. I looked down. Ashley's hand was under the laminate surface, and in it was a snub-nosed revolver pressed hard against my leg through her coat pocket. Scream and I pull the trigger, she whispered, her face inches from mine. Now open your banking app. I froze the cold steel of the barrel digging into my thigh, sending a jolt of pure adrenaline straight to my heart. My breath caught in my throat, and for a second, the only sound in the diner was the hum of the refrigerator and the pounding of my own blood in my ears. I stared at Ashley, expecting to see her pull the trigger, expecting the loud bang that would end my life right there in a booth that smelled like bacon grease. But then, a voice crackled in my ear, calm and steady. We see the weapon, Imani. Do not move. We have a sniper on the roof across the street, and Agent Miller is at the counter. I shifted my eyes slightly to the left without turning my head. The man I had assumed was a long-haul trucker eating a slice of cherry pie was now sitting up straighter. His hand was resting casually inside his jacket near his shoulder holster. He caught my gaze and gave a microscopic nod. He was not eating. He was waiting. Vance's voice continued in my earpiece. We can take her now, but if we do, we lose the chain of command. She is the link to the supplier. We need you to keep playing the game. Stall her. Get her to take you to the handover. I swallowed hard, forcing the terror down into the pit of my stomach. I had to trust them. I had to trust that they would not let my sister-in-law blow a hole in my leg. I looked back at Ashley, who was smiling like a cat playing with a mouse. I cannot do a transfer like that on public Wi-Fi, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. A $500,000 crypto transaction will trigger every security flag my bank has if I do it from a Waffle House. It will freeze the account instantly, then you get nothing. You get... Ashley narrowed her eyes, the gun pressing harder against my leg. Do not lie to me, Imani. I know how rich people bank. You have overrides. I do, I agreed. But I need my security token. It is in my car. Let us walk out to the car. I can do it there. She hesitated, weighing greed against caution. She knew I was slippery. But the promise of $500,000 was a powerful drug. Fine, she hissed. But if you try to signal anyone, if you try to run, I will leave you bleeding in the asphalt. Just as she started to slide out of the booth, my phone buzzed on the table between us. It was not a text from my bank. It was not a notification from work. The screen lit up with a message from the restricted number that had called me earlier, the number belonging to the man who threatened to kill my entire family. Ashley saw it too. Her eyes flicked down to the screen, and her confident smirk faltered for a fraction of a second. Open it, she commanded. I tapped the glass with a shaking finger. The message was short, precise, and terrifying. It was an address and a time. The Old Stone Church on Highland. Midnight. Bring the girl. Ashley read the words and her face paled beneath her heavy makeup. Bring the girl. That meant me. They did not just want the money my parents had run off with. They wanted the witness. They wanted the loose end. She looked at me and the gun in her pocket trembled. Looks like change of plans, she whispered. The boss wants a meeting. And we are not going to be late for church. The drive to the Old Stone Church was a blur of neon streetlights and terrified silence. Ashley sat in the passenger seat, the revolver trained on my ribs, her knuckles white against the dark metal. I could feel the sweat trickling down my back, cold and clammy against the silk of my blouse. Every time I hit a pothole, the gun jibbed into my side, a constant reminder that my life was measured in pounds of pressure on a trigger. I tapped the steering wheel 3 times, a signal we had agreed upon with Agent Vance. It meant we were in motion. It meant the target was acquired. We pulled into the gravel lot of the church just as the bell tower began to toll midnight. The sound was mournful, a slow, deep gong that vibrated in my chest. The church was a Gothic monstrosity of gray stone and stained glass that looked black in the moonlight. It was abandoned, the windows boarded up, the landscaping overgrown with kudzu that looked like grasping fingers in the shadows. I saw my father's sedan parked near the entrance. The engine was ticking as it cooled. Desmond and Patricia were standing by the hood, arguing in harsh whispers. They still clutched the duffel bag of money between them like a life raft. Marcus was there too, leaning against the fender, smoking a cigarette with shaking hands. He looked wired, his eyes darting at every shadow. Ashley forced me out of the car. "Move!" she hissed, prodding me with the gun. We walked into the circle of light cast by the single working street lamp. My mother gasped when she saw us. She looked from me to the gun in Ashley's hand and her face crumpled. "You brought her here," she wailed, clutching the money bag tighter to her chest. "They said to come alone. They said if we brought anyone else, they would kill us all. They asked for her." Patricia, Ashley snapped, shoving me forward until I stumbled into my brother. "The boss wants the girl. And he wants the rest of his money." Marcus looked at me. There was no brotherly love in his eyes. There was only the feral look of a trapped rat. "You better have a plan, Imani," he growled, flicking his cigarette butt at my feet. "Because if you dragged us here to die, I will strangle you myself before they get the chance." I looked at them. My family, huddled together in the dark, turning on each other like wolves in a famine. They were pathetic, they were terrified, and they were completely alone. I opened my mouth to speak, to tell them that the FBI was listening, that there were snipers in the trees, that this was all going to be over soon. But before I could get a word out, the darkness around us exploded with light. Floodlights blinded us from every angle. High beams from massive black SUVs cut through the night, turning the gravel lot into a stage. We threw our hands up, shielding our eyes from the glare. The sound of heavy car doors slamming echoed like gunshots. I squinted through my fingers. Figures were emerging from the vehicles. Men in dark suits. Men with assault rifles hanging from tactical slings. They did not rush. They did not shout. They moved with the terrifying discipline of soldiers. They formed a perimeter, sealing off every exit, blocking every escape route. A man stepped out from the lead SUV. He was dressed in a pristine white suit that glowed in the headlights. He walked toward us, the gravel crunching under his polished shoes. He stopped 10 feet away, smiling a smile that did not reach his dead shark eyes. "Good evening, family," he said, his voice smooth as oil. "I believe you have something that belongs to me." The man in the white suit stopped a few feet from us. Up close, he smelled of expensive cologne and gun oil. He looked at the duffel bag my mother was clutching to her chest, and then he looked at the terrified faces of my family. He did not look impressed. "Is this it?" he asked, his voice barely rising above a whisper. $50,000. That covers the late fees. But what about the product Marcus lost? What about the inconvenience? You people have caused me a lot of trouble. And I do not like trouble." He snapped his fingers, and the men with rifles took a step forward, raising their weapons. The sound of safety catches clicking off echoed in the silence like thunder. My mother screamed and dropped to her knees, dragging the money bag down with her. Please, she begged. We will get more, we will work. We will. Just give us time. Time is a luxury you cannot afford, Patricia, the boss said. You are out of time. Kill them. No! The scream tore from my father's throat. It was a sound of pure primal cowardice. He did not step in front of his wife. He did not shield his son. He turned on me. He grabbed my shoulders with bruising force and shoved me forward. I stumbled, my heels catching in the gravel, and fell to my knees at the feet of the man in white. Take her! Desmond shrieked, pointing a shaking finger at me. She is the one with the money. She has millions. She is a forensic accountant. She knows how to move money. She is the one who called the police. She is the one causing all the problems. Take her. Kill her. Just let me go. I looked up at my father from the ground. His face was twisted into a mask of selfish terror. There was no love there. There was no regret. He was offering me up as a human sacrifice to save his own miserable life. He was selling his daughter for a chance to run away. The betrayal did not hurt. It clarified. It burned away the last lingering wish for a daddy who loved me. That man did not exist. There was only this coward shivering in the dark, willing to watch his child die so he could live another day. The boss looked at Desmond with an expression of utter contempt. You would sell your own blood to save your skin, he said. You are pathetic, Desmond. Then he looked down at me. His eyes were cold and dead. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a heavy chrome pistol. He did not hesitate. He did not monologue. He simply raised the weapon and pressed the cold steel barrel against the center of my forehead. Goodbye, Ms. Jenkins. I closed my eyes and waited for the bullet. The cold metal against my skin was the only thing I could feel in the humid night air. I held my breath, preparing for the end, but the thunder that cracked the silence did not come from the gun pressed to my forehead. It came from the tree line. A single shot rang out, sharp and precise. The pressure on my skull vanished instantly as the man in the white suit jerked backward, his shoulder exploding in a spray of red. He screamed a sound of shock and agony, dropping the pistol as he collapsed to the gravel. Before he even hit the ground, the night erupted into total chaos. Flashbangs detonated in the center of the lot, blinding everyone with searing white light and a deafening boom that rattled my teeth. I threw myself flat against the sharp rocks, covering my head with my arms as the air filled with the shouts of federal agents. FBI, get down! Drop your weapons! Do it now! The syndicate men were professional, but they were outgunned. 2 of them tried to raise their rifles but were dropped immediately by tactical teams moving in from the perimeter. The rest threw their hands up, realizing there was no way out. The sound of heavy boots pounding the earth surrounded me. I felt a hand grab the back of my jacket, and for a terrifying second I thought it was Ashley trying to use me as a shield again. Stay down, Imani. It was Agent Vance. His voice was shouting, but it sounded distant through the ringing in my ears. We have the perimeter secured. You are safe. I looked up through the haze of smoke and dust. The scene was a tableau of violence and justice. The man in the white suit was face down in the dirt, his pristine jacket ruined as an agent cuffed his hands behind his back. Ashley was on her knees screaming about her rights, while a female officer zip-tied her wrists. The syndicate muscle was being lined up against the black SUVs. It was over. The nightmare was supposed to be over. But as the adrenaline began to fade, a new panic set in. I scanned the chaotic scene, searching for the 3 people who had brought me here. I looked for the velvet smoking jacket. I looked for the tracksuit. I looked for Marcus's terrified face. They were gone. I scrambled to my feet, ignoring Vance's order to stay put. Where are they? I shouted, spinning around. Where are my parents? Vance looked around, his expression hardening as he realized the gap in the lineup. They were right there by the hood of the car. I looked past the SUVs toward the crumbling stone structure of the church. The heavy oak door behind the rotting pulpit was swinging on its rusted hinges. It was a service entrance, hidden in the shadows of the overgrown ivy. while the flashbangs were blinding everyone and the agents were focused on the men with automatic weapons. My family had done the only thing they were truly good at. They ran. They slipped out the back door. I screamed, pointing at the gaping black hole in the church wall. "They are heading for the woods," Vance swore into his radio, ordering a pursuit team to the rear of the building. I did not wait for them. I ran toward the church, my bare feet bleeding on the stones. I reached the doorway just in time to hear the sound of an engine roaring to life on the dirt road behind the property. I looked out into the darkness and saw the taillights of an old pickup truck, probably a getaway vehicle Marcus had stashed, tearing away into the night. They had escaped, and they were loose in the city with nothing left to lose. "Get in the car, Imani," Vance shouted, pushing me toward his armored SUV. I scrambled into the passenger seat, my heart hammering against my bruised ribs. The engine roared to life, and we peeled out of the gravel lot onto the main road, tires screaming in protest. Ahead of us, the taillights of the pickup truck were weaving dangerously through the late-night traffic. They were desperate, and desperate people drive like they have a death wish. "They are heading south," Vance said, gripping the wheel with white knuckles. "Toward the industrial district." "What is down there, Imani? Does your father have contacts at the rail yards?" "No," I said, watching the gap between us close. "He does not have contacts. He has delusions. He thinks he can find a container. He thinks he can smuggle himself out like one of his packages. He is running blind." The chase was a blur of flashing lights and adrenaline. Marcus was driving the truck, and he was reckless. He blew through red lights, forcing other cars to swerve into ditches. He hopped curbs. He was willing to kill innocent people just to keep his freedom for another 5 minutes. I watched my family fleeing like rats from a sinking ship, and I felt a cold, hard knot of resolve tighten in my chest. They had terrorized me for years. They had threatened my life. They had sold my safety. I was not going to let them fade into the night. "He is turning toward the river terminal," I yelled, pointing at the exit ramp. "Cut him off!" Vance slammed on the accelerator, the SUV surging forward. We pulled alongside the pickup. I looked through the window. Marcus was screaming at the wheel, his face a mask of sweaty terror. My mother was clutching the dashboard, screaming. My father was in the middle, looking back at us with eyes that held zero remorse, only fury. He mouthed something at me. "It looked like I made you." "Pit him," Vance ordered into his radio. A patrol car swerved in from the left, clipping the rear bumper of the truck. The pickup spun out, screeching across the asphalt in a shower of sparks. It slammed into a chain-link fence, tearing through the metal and skidding onto the concrete of the shipping yard. We screeched to a halt, boxing them in against a stack of rusty shipping containers and the dark, oily water of the river channel. There was nowhere left to run. The tires of the truck were blown. Steam hissed from the radiator. I stepped out of the SUV, the night wind whipping my hair across my face. Blue and red lights pulsed against the metal containers, creating a strobe effect of chaos. The doors of the pickup flew open. My parents stumbled out, dragging Marcus with them. They backed up toward the water's edge, looking for a boat, looking for a miracle, looking for anything but the handcuffs waiting for them. They were trapped. And for the first time in my life, I was the one holding the keys. The red and blue lights painted their faces in strobe colors of guilt and terror. Officers swarmed the truck, weapons drawn, screaming commands that echoed off the metal containers. "Get on the ground. Hands where we can see them. Do not move." My mother, Patricia, fell to her knees first. She was not praying. She was hyperventilating, clutching her chest as if her heart was finally breaking under the weight of her own sins. My father, Desmond, tried to stand tall, tried to maintain the illusion of the patriarch, but a young officer kicked his legs out from under him and forced his face into the oil-stained concrete. The sound of his cheek hitting the ground was a dull thud that signaled the end of his reign. Marcus did not fight. He collapsed like a puppet whose strings had been cut, sobbing into the dirt. He was a man who had been carried his whole life, and now he had finally been dropped. But Ashley was different. As they zip-tied her wrists behind her back, She locked eyes with me. Her face was a mask of pure venom. "You think this is over?" she hissed over the shouting of the police. "You think you can just walk away? I will burn your name. I will make sure every person in Atlanta knows what you did." I stood by the SUV, my arms crossed against the chill of the river wind. I watched them get processed like inventory. I watched the people who gave me life get read their rights. I felt a strange sense of detachment. It was like finishing a difficult audit. The numbers finally balanced, the fraud was exposed, the ledger was closed. Agent Vance walked over to me, his face grim. "We got the cash. We got the confession on tape. And we have them in possession of a getaway vehicle fleeing a federal crime scene. This is a wrap, Imani. You can go home now." Home! I looked at the flashing lights reflecting on the dark water. I did not have a home. Not anymore. I had a penthouse and a portfolio, but the concept of family was dead and buried in this shipping yard. As they dragged Desmond toward the squad car, he twisted around, fighting the grip of two federal agents. He looked wild, his velvet jacket torn, his eyes bulging. He found me in the darkness. He did not look like a father. He looked like a cornered animal realizing the trap had snapped shut. "You did this!" he roared, his voice cracking with fury and echoing across the water. "You led us here. You fed us to the wolves. You set me up, Imani. You set up your own flesh and blood. You are a traitor. You are the devil." I looked at him calmly, my face a mask of stone. I did not flinch. I did not look away. I watched as they shoved his head down and forced him into the back of the car. I watched the door slam shut on my childhood. "I set you up," I whispered to the empty air. "No, Dad. I just finally let you fall." 3 months of silence is a dangerous thing. In my line of work, silence usually means someone is shredding documents or burying bodies. I spent those 90 days living in a state of suspended animation. My penthouse was no longer a home, it was a command center. Every wall was covered in timelines and flowcharts. I was not just a witness for the prosecution, I was their architect. I handed the district attorney the keys to the kingdom on a silver platter. Bank records, surveillance logs, the audio recording of my father bargaining for his life with my money. It should have been an open and shut case, but I forgot one variable. Ashley. I sat in Harrison's office watching the rain streak against the glass. Harrison looked grim. He pushed a legal filing across the desk toward me. It was thick and heavy. "Ashley has new representation," he said, his voice devoid of its usual confidence. "She fired her public defender this morning. She retained Sterling and Associates." I stared at him. Sterling. That was not a strip mall lawyer. That was a firm that defended senators and cartel bosses. Their retainer alone was 6 figures. How I asked, my voice tight. "We froze their assets. We seized the cash. Ashley does not have a job. She does not have a savings account. How is she paying for the most expensive defense team in Georgia?" Harrison sighed, rubbing his temples. "We missed an account, Imani. A crypto wallet on a cold storage drive she kept stitched inside her son's teddy bear. The police found the drive during a sweep, but by the time they cracked the encryption, the funds had moved. She had a nest egg. Nearly $300,000 skimmed from the laundry operation over 5 years. She was not just spending it on shoes, she was saving for a rainy day. And it is pouring. I felt a surge of begrudging respect mixed with nausea. Ashley was smarter than I gave her credit for. She had played the long game too, but hiring a fancy lawyer was one thing. Winning was another. I had the evidence. I had the truth. "They are not going for an acquittal," Harrison continued, reading my mind. "They are going for a narrative shift. Sterling isn't trying to prove she is innocent. He is trying to prove she was coerced. Coerced by whom? My father. Marcus. They are all in custody." Harrison looked me in the eye. "No, not by them. By you." My blood ran cold. "They filed a motion this afternoon," he said. "The defense theory is that you are the mastermind. You are the forensic accountant. You know how to structure shell companies. You know how to hide assets. They are claiming you set up the laundering scheme years ago using your family as unwitting puppets. They claim you got greedy, and when the heat got too high, you set them up to take the fall to clear your own name. I stood up my chair, scraping loudly against the floor. That is insanity. I called the FBI. I wore a wire. All part of your exit strategy, according to Sterling. He says you sacrificed your family to buy your immunity, and he is leaking it to the press. My phone buzzed. Then it buzzed again. And again. A crescendo of notifications. I looked down. The headlines were already hitting the blogs. The accountant's con. Did Imani Jenkins frame her own mother? I looked at Harrison. The war was not over. It had just begun. The Fulton County Courthouse looked like a tomb built of marble and bad intentions. I walked up the steps wearing a white power suit that cost more than the bail my mother had tried to raise. It was armor, pure and simple. The reporters were there just as Harrison predicted. They shouted my name, asking if I really framed my own mother. I ignored them behind my oversized sunglasses. I was not there to give interviews. I was there to bury the past. Inside, the air was freezing. I pushed through the heavy oak doors of courtroom 4B and felt the temperature drop another 10 degrees. The gallery was packed. Half of Atlanta's social scene was there to see the downfall of the Jenkins family. But I only had eyes for the defendants' table. They were sitting in a row like a twisted version of a family portrait. Desmond and Patricia were in orange jumpsuits, their assets frozen and their wardrobes seized. They looked small and gray, stripped of the pretenses they had worn for decades. Marcus looked hollow, his eyes staring at the table. But Ashley was different. She was wearing a modest navy dress probably bought by her new high-powered lawyer. She did not look defeated. She looked venomous. As I walked down the center aisle, the air crackled with their hatred. My mother turned her head, and the look she gave me could have peeled paint off the walls. It was not the look of a mother disappointed in her child. It was the look of an enemy soldier watching their captor. She mouthed a word at me. It looked like traitor. I took my seat behind the prosecutor, keeping my back straight and my face blank. Harrison sat beside me, patting my hand, but his grip was tense. He knew Sterling was up to something. The defense table was too calm. Sterling, the man who defended monsters, sat relaxed, his expensive pen tapping a rhythm on his notepad. All rise. Judge Mayweather entered, a no-nonsense woman who had seen every trick in the book. She banged the gavel, and the room fell silent. I expected the district attorney to stand. I expected the opening statements to paint my family as the criminals they were. I was ready to wait my turn. But before the DA could even clear his throat, Sterling stood up. He buttoned his jacket with a slow, deliberate movement and smiled at the jury. It was a smile that promised violence, Your Honor. The defense moves to call its first witness immediately, he said, his voice booming in the quiet room. We believe her testimony is crucial to establishing the foundation of this entire conspiracy. We call Imani Jenkins to the stand. The room gasped. I froze. The prosecution was supposed to present their case first. This was an ambush. A procedural trick designed to rattle me before I could settle in. Harrison grabbed my arm, whispering an objection, but the judge waved him down. She looked at me over her spectacles. Ms. Jenkins, take the stand. I stood up, my legs feeling like they were miles away. I walked toward the witness box, feeling Ashley's eyes burning a hole in my back. I swore to tell the truth. Then I sat down and looked into the eyes of the man paid to destroy me. Sterling walked up to the podium. He did not look at his notes. He looked straight at me. Ms. Jenkins, let us skip the pleasantries. Is it true that you created the shell company Genesis Real Estate Trust specifically to entrap your parents in a debt they could never repay? Sterling paced in front of the witness box like a tiger stalking prey through tall grass. He did not look at his notes because he did not need them. He was performing. He walked over to the defense table and picked up a stack of financial documents, waving them in the air so the jury could see the gold leaf letterhead. Ms. Jenkins, let us discuss your lifestyle. You live in a penthouse in Buckhead valued at $2.5 million, correct? You drive a Porsche. You carry handbags that cost more than the average American makes in a year, correct? I said, my voice steady. And you acquired all of this wealth on a salary. Just a salary. I earn a base salary plus commission and bonuses for asset recovery, I explained. Sterling laughed, a short, sharp bark of disbelief. Bonuses. Ms. Jenkins, you have $3.8 million in liquid assets. You have offshore holdings. You have blind trusts. This is the financial profile of a kingpin, not an employee. Is it not true that these assets are actually the proceeds of the money laundering operation you forced your father to run? Is it not true that you used your family as mules to build your fortune while you sat in your ivory tower? Objection, the prosecutor shouted, standing up. Speculation. Sustained. Judge Mayweather ruled, but the damage was done. The jury was looking at me differently now. They saw the expensive suit. They saw the jewelry. And thanks to Sterling, they saw a woman who profited from crime while her family suffered. Sterling leaned in close, his cologne overpowering the sterile smell of the courtroom. You set them up, didn't you? You realized the FBI was closing in. You realized your brother was a liability. So you concocted this elaborate story about identity theft and extortion to serve them up on a platter. You sacrificed your own flesh and blood to keep your millions. Admit it, you are the mastermind. I looked past him to the defense table. Ashley was smirking. My mother was nodding along, tears streaming down her face, playing the betrayed martyr to perfection. They wanted me to break. They wanted me to scream. They wanted the angry black woman, the stereotype they could dismiss and convict. I took a deep breath and smoothed the fabric of my skirt. I looked Sterling dead in the eye. Mr. Sterling, you seem to be under the impression that wealth implies guilt. That is a very convenient narrative for your clients who have never earned an honest dollar in their lives. But you are forgetting who I am. I am not just an accountant. I am the person Fortune 500 companies call when their CFOs try to steal from them. I am the person the government calls when they cannot find the money. I bill $700 an hour, and I work 80 hours a week. I leaned into the microphone, letting my voice fill the room, calm and cold and absolute. I did not steal that money. I did not launder it. I earned it. I am rich because I am exceptional at my job. Unlike your clients who are sitting there because they are incompetent criminals who got caught, Sterling is not a man who gives up easily. He slammed his hand onto the podium, his face flushing a deep, angry red. You expect this jury to believe that you handed over $50,000 in cash to your parents out of the goodness of your heart. Innocent people do not make drop-offs in the middle of the night, Ms. Jenkins. That was a payoff. You were buying their silence. You were paying them to take the fall for your operation. I waited for the echo of his accusation to die down. I looked at the jury, ensuring they saw my calm against his storm. I looked at Judge Mayweather, who was watching me with intense interest. Then I turned back to Sterling. I am glad you brought up the meeting at the diner. Mr. Sterling, I said, my voice projecting clearly to the back of the room. Because I did not go there alone. I went there under the supervision of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and I was wearing a recording device authorized by a federal warrant. Sterling froze. His pen hovered over his legal pad. He looked at his clients. They looked back at him with wide, terrified eyes. They had not told him about the wire. They had not told him about the confession. I believe the prosecution has entered Exhibit 4B into evidence. I continued. Perhaps we should listen to what was actually said that night. The prosecutor stood up, a smug smile on his face. Permission to play the audio recording, Your Honor. Granted, Judge Mayweather said. The courtroom fell into a heavy, expectant silence. Then the speakers mounted on the walls crackled to life. The ambient noise of the diner filled the room, the hum of the refrigerator, the clinking of silverware. And then my father's voice, loud and clear and undeniable. It was not just money Marcus lost, it was product. The syndicate holds us responsible. The jury gasped. Sterling closed his eyes briefly. The recording continued. My mother's voice, shrill and desperate. They came to the house. Men with guns. If we do not pay the debt by tonight, they will kill Marcus. Then my voice on the tape, calm and probing. So there is no doctor. There is no medical emergency. And finally Desmond again sealing his own fate. No, we are in debt to monsters. The recording ended. The silence that followed was absolute. The narrative of the poor manipulated family had just been obliterated in less than 60 seconds. They had admitted to the drug debt. They had admitted to the lies. They had admitted that the money was for a cartel, not for me. I looked at Sterling. I did not pay them to be quiet, counselor. I paid them to speak, and as you just heard, they sold their freedom for $50,000. The gallery erupted. Reporters were typing furiously. The jurors were looking at the defense table with expressions ranging from shock to disgust. The game was over. Suddenly, a commotion broke out at the defense table. Patricia stood up, her hand fluttering to her throat in a gesture I had seen 1,000 times before whenever she wanted to escape consequences. She looked at the jury, her eyes wide and wet. Then she let out a soft moan. Her knees buckled and she collapsed sideways, hitting the floor with a thud that sounded suspiciously controlled. Mom, Marcus screamed, jumping up and knocking over his chair. She is having a heart attack. Help her! You killed her, Imani! Pandemonium broke out. The bailiffs rushed forward. But I sat perfectly still in the witness box. I watched my mother lying on the floor. I saw her eyelids flutter. I saw the way she had braced herself before she fell. She was not dying. She was acting. And for the first time in my life, I was not buying a ticket to the show. Judge Mayweather banged her gavel with enough force to crack the wood. Order, she bellowed. Order in this court. The bailiffs lifted my mother back into her chair. She was panting dramatically, but the moment she realized no ambulance was coming, she miraculously recovered. The judge glared at the defense table. Mr. Sterling, control your clients, or I will hold them in contempt. This is a courtroom, not a theater. Sterling straightened his tie, looking flustered for the first time. He tried to pivot. He tried to save the sinking ship. Ms. Jenkins, a recording of a desperate family under duress, proves nothing but fear. It does not prove financial crimes. It does not prove money laundering. For that, you would need a paper trail, and my client, Ashley Jenkins, is a housewife. She does not have a finance degree. I smiled. It was the smile of a hunter who just watched the prey step into the snare. I was hoping you would say that. I turned to the prosecutor. Please display Exhibit 5C. The large monitors in the courtroom flickered to life. It was a complex flowchart of bank accounts, wire transfers, and shell companies. It looked like a spider web made of red ink. At the center of the web was not my father. It was not Marcus. It was a limited liability company registered in the Cayman Islands under the name AJ Consulting. I pointed to the screen. Mr. Sterling, you are right. Your client does not have a finance degree, but she does have a laptop and a greed that outweighs her intelligence. I spent the last 3 months doing a forensic audit of the Jenkins family finances. I traced every dollar from the street to the bank. I looked directly at Ashley. She was staring at the screen, her face draining of color. She recognized the account numbers. My father was the mule, I explained to the jury, my voice clinical and precise. He physically moved the cash. But Ashley was the architect. She set up the cleaning accounts. She structured the deposits to avoid IRS flags. And here is the most interesting part. I tapped the screen, highlighting a series of withdrawals. Every time she washed a bundle for the syndicate, she moved 10% into a private crypto wallet that only she controlled. She was not just laundering money for a cartel, she was stealing from them. She embezzled nearly $300,000 from the very men who threatened to kill us. The heir left the room. Stealing from the government was one thing. Stealing from a violent crime syndicate was a death sentence. Ashley knew it. The color left her face so completely, she looked like a corpse. Sterling looked down at the documents in front of him. He realized he had been lied to. He realized he was defending a woman who had double-crossed a cartel. He started to close his briefcase, a subtle signal of retreat. "You did not tell me this," he muttered to Ashley, loud enough for the front row to hear. "You told me you were innocent." Ashley looked at him, then she looked at the jury, then she looked at me. The walls were closing in, the lie was over, the money was gone, and the monsters she worked for would be waiting for her in prison. She let out a sound that was not human. It was a shriek of pure primal madness. She did not attack me. She did not attack the judge. She turned on the only person left within reach. "You are supposed to fix this!" she screamed, lunging at Sterling. She clawed at his face, digging her nails into his expensive tan. "You promised me. You took my money. Fix it! Fix it!" The bailiffs tackled her, dragging her off her own lawyer as she kicked and screamed profanities that would make a sailor blush. I watched the chaos unfold from the witness stand, my hands folded calmly in my lap. The mask had finally slipped, and the whole world could see the monster underneath. The bailiffs finally restored order, dragging a screaming Ashley out of the side door. The heavy silence that descended on the courtroom was not peaceful. It was the calm before a nuclear detonation. Sterling sat alone at the defense table, wiping a scratch on his cheek, his composure shattered. He looked at the judge and then at the empty chair where his client had just sat. He had lost control. The prosecutor did not give him time to recover. He stood up and buttoned his jacket. "The people called Jasmine Jenkins to the stand." A murmur rippled through the gallery. My parents' heads snapped up. They had not seen Jasmine since the arrest. They probably thought she was raising money for their defense or rallying support on social media. They did not know she had cut a deal. Jasmine walked in from the judge's chambers. She looked different. The glamorous influencer with the perfect contour and the designer weave was gone. In her place was a young woman in a plain gray cardigan with her natural hair pulled back in a bun. She looked young. She looked terrified. And she did not look at our parents. She took the oath, her voice barely a whisper. When she sat down, she gripped the edges of the witness box like it was a life raft. "Ms. Jenkins," the prosecutor began gently, "you have been granted full immunity in exchange for your truthful testimony today regarding the events of October 15th, is that correct?" "Yes," Jasmine whispered. "Please tell the jury what you overheard your parents discussing in the kitchen 3 days before the arrest." Jasmine took a shaky breath. She finally looked at our mother. Patricia was staring at her with wide, pleading eyes, silently begging her favorite child to stop. But Jasmine was a survivor, and survivors do what they have to do. "They were talking about money," she said, her voice gaining strength. "They were talking about how the $50,000 from Imani was not enough to pay off the syndicate debt. They said they needed a permanent solution. They said they needed a lump sum that would let them disappear." "And did they discuss how to get this money?" the prosecutor asked. Jasmine nodded, tears spilling onto her cheeks. "Yes." Daddy pulled out a folder. It was a life insurance policy. He took it out on Imani 6 months ago. He forged her signature. The payout was $2 million in the event of an accidental death. The jury shifted in their seats. Insurance fraud was bad, but it was white-collar crime. They were not prepared for what came next. "What did they plan to do, Ms. Jenkins?" Jasmine closed her eyes. "They planned a dinner. Mom said she would cook pot roast because it has a strong flavor. She said it would hide the taste. Daddy said he had something from the garden shed. Something for rats. He said he would put it in the wine. He said Imani always drinks Merlot, and if they put enough in, she would just go to sleep and never wake up. They said it would look like a heart attack or an aneurysm." A collective gasp sucked the air out of the room. My father Desmond stood up, his face purple. "You liar," he roared. "You ungrateful little liar, I gave you everything." "Sit down, Mr. Jenkins," the judge shouted, banging her gavel. Jasmine opened her eyes and pointed a shaking finger at him. "You killed the dog," she screamed. "You tested it on Buster. I saw you bury him in the backyard the morning of the dinner. You killed the dog to make sure the poison worked before you gave it to Imani. You were going to kill my sister for $2 million. I watched the faces of the 12 jurors. 5 minutes ago, they looked at my parents as incompetent grifters. Now the look had changed. The pity was gone. The skepticism was gone. They were looking at Desmond and Patricia Jenkins, not as parents down on their luck, but as monsters who would feed their own child poison for a paycheck. The courtroom was silent enough to hear a pin drop after Jasmine left the stand. The weight of the attempted murder accusation hung over the defense table like a guillotine blade. My father Desmond sat slumped in his chair, his face slick with sweat. He looked at the jury box and saw 12 pairs of eyes staring back at him with undisguised revulsion. He looked at the exit signs. He looked at me. And then I saw the light leave his eyes. The light of loyalty. The light of family. It was replaced by the cold, hard glint of survival. He leaned over to his junior counsel, who had taken over after Sterling's humiliation. He whispered something urgent. The lawyer shook his head vigorously, but Desmond ignored him. He stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. "Your Honor," he said, his voice shaking but loud, "I want to make a statement. I want to allocate responsibility." The judge narrowed her eyes. "Mr. Jenkins, you are advised to speak through your counsel." "No, Your Honor." Desmond interrupted, his hands trembling as he gripped the lapels of his cheap prison-issued blazer. "My counsel does not know the truth. My counsel thinks we are a united front. But I cannot sit here and take the fall for a crime I did not commit. I cannot let that woman destroy what is left of my life." He pointed a shaking finger not at me and not at Jasmine. He pointed it directly at the woman sitting next to him. His wife of 35 years. Patricia. It was her idea. He shouted the words, tumbling out in a rush of desperate cowardice. "She is the one who wanted the money. She is the one who spent us into bankruptcy with her hats and her church donations and her need to look rich. I told her we should just ask Imani nicely. I told her we should just declare bankruptcy. But she said no. She said she would rather die than look poor." Patricia turned to look at him, her mouth opening in slow motion, shock. She looked like she had been slapped. "She bought the rat poison." Desmond continued, his voice rising to a hysterical pitch. "She went to the hardware store on 4th Street. You can check the cameras. She cooked the roast. She poured the wine. She told me to distract Imani. She said if we got the insurance money, we could move to Florida and start over. I was scared. I did not want to do it. She made me. She is the one you want. She is the mastermind. I am just a victim of her greed." The betrayal was absolute. The man who had promised to love and cherish her was now offering her up to the state penitentiary to shave a few years off his sentence. Patricia stared at him for one heartbeat, then two. The shock on her face curdled into a rage so pure it looked demonic. She let out a shriek that made the bailiffs jump. "You coward!" she screamed. "You lying, spineless worm!" She did not wait for the judge. She did not wait for permission. She launched herself out of her chair. She threw herself at Desmond, her fingernails aiming for his eyes. They crashed to the floor in a tangle of limbs and orange fabric rolling under the defense table. Patricia was clawing at his face, biting his ear, screaming obscenities that echoed off the vaulted ceiling. "Get off me!" Desmond yelled, trying to pin her arms. "She is crazy. See? I told you she is crazy." The bailiffs swarmed them, dragging them apart. Patricia was still kicking, spitting at her husband, foaming at the mouth with fury. "I will kill you," she howled as they hauled her backward. "I will kill you myself." I sat in the witness box, watching my parents tear each other apart on the courtroom floor. It was the end of the line, the final indignity. But as the officers finally pinned Patricia to the carpet, she looked up. She locked eyes with me, and the look on her face shifted from rage to something else, something terrified, because she realized she had just given me the final piece of the puzzle. Judge Mayweather did not waste time. She reviewed the evidence, the confessions, and the spectacle of my parents attacking each other with a cold, detached precision. When she returned to the bench to deliver the sentences, the courtroom was so quiet I could hear the hum of the air conditioning. My parents stood up, their chains rattling. They looked small now. The rage had burned out, leaving only the ashes of fear. Desmond was shaking his head, muttering to himself. Patricia was sobbing quietly, her face buried in her hands. Marcus stared at the floor, a man who knew he had run out of road. Ashley looked at me, her eyes filled with a desperate pleading that came too late. The judge adjusted her glasses and looked down at them. In my 20 years on the bench, I have seen greed destroy families, she said, her voice echoing off the mahogany walls. But I have never seen parents willing to poison their own child for an insurance payout. You did not just break the law. You broke the fundamental covenant of humanity. You betrayed the blood you were supposed to protect. She looked at Desmond and Patricia. For the crimes of conspiracy to commit murder, money laundering, and wire fraud, I sentence you both to 20 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. You sold your souls for a lifestyle you could not afford, and now you will pay the bill. Patricia let out a wail that sounded like a siren. Desmond collapsed into his chair, his legs giving out as the reality of dying in prison hit him. Judge Mayweather turned to Marcus. For identity theft, grand larceny, and aggravated assault, I sentence you to 15 years. You stole your sister's name, and you tried to steal her future. You will have a long time to think about the value of family. Finally, she looked at Ashley. You laundered money for a violent syndicate. You extorted your sister-in-law at gunpoint, and you used your children as pawns. 10 years. And I am recommending that your parental rights be terminated permanently. Ashley screamed. It was a raw, primal sound. My babies! She shrieked, reaching out toward the gallery as if someone there could save her. You cannot take my babies! The gavel banged one final time, sealing their fates in the record books. The bailiffs moved in, pulling them toward the side door that led to the holding cells and the transport vans. The sound of shackles dragging across the floor was the only music I needed. It was over. The nightmare was finally locked away in a cage where it belonged. But before they could drag them out, Judge Mayweather raised a hand, stopping the procession. She looked over the rim of her glasses directly at me, sitting alone in the witness box. Her expression softened just a fraction, shifting from the iron judge to a woman who had seen too much pain. Ms. Jenkins, she said, her voice gentle for the first time that day. You have been through a hell that few can imagine. You survived betrayal by the very people who gave you life. Before this court adjourns and these prisoners are remanded, do you have anything you wish to say to them? A final word. I stood up from the witness chair. My heels clicked against the wood floor, echoing in the silent courtroom. I walked to the railing that separated the witness box from the defense table. I was close enough to smell the fierce sweat on my father, close enough to see the cracks in my mother's foundation. They looked up at me. 4 people who shared my last name, but none of my spirit. For 32 years I said, my voice steady and clear, I thought family meant sacrifice. I thought it meant setting myself on fire to keep you warm. I thought if I just gave enough money, if I just fixed enough mistakes, if I just stayed quiet enough, you would finally love me. But I was wrong. You did not want a daughter or a sister. You wanted a resource. You wanted an insurance policy. You wanted a scapegoat. I looked at Desmond. You tried to trade my life for your freedom, Dad. You looked a killer in the eye and told him to take me instead. That is not what a father does. That is what a coward does. I looked at Patricia. You fed me poison, Mom. You smiled and told me to drink up while you planned how to spend the death benefit. You broke the one rule of nature that says a mother protects her young. You ate your young. I looked at Marcus and Ashley. You stole my name. You stole my peace. You tried to steal my future because you were too lazy to build your own. I took a deep breath, feeling the air fill my lungs without the weight of their expectations crushing my chest. I have paid a very high price for my silence over the years. I paid with my credit score. I paid with my mental health. I paid with my trust. But the debt is settled. The ledger is closed. I am not your victim. I am the woman who stopped you. I leaned over the railing, looking them dead in the eyes one last time. Today, I am buying back my freedom. And the cost is your futures. I turned my back on them and sat down. Take them away, Judge Mayweather ordered. The courtroom erupted into motion. The bailiffs moved in a wall of uniforms and jingling keys. They hauled my parents to their feet. They grabbed Marcus and Ashley. The chains rattled loud and harsh. My mother reached out a hand toward me, her fingers grasping at the air, as if she could still pull me back into her web, but the distance was too great. The heavy side door opened, revealing the dark corridor that led to the holding cells. It was a mouth waiting to swallow them whole. I pushed open the heavy double doors of the Fulton County Courthouse and stepped out into the blinding Atlanta afternoon. The transition from the frigid air-conditioned courtroom to the humid heat of the city felt like waking up from a long, cold nightmare. The sun hit my face, and for the first time in years, it did not feel like a spotlight of scrutiny. It felt like a baptism. The press was waiting at the bottom of the marble steps. It was a sea of cameras, microphones, and shouting reporters. They were hungry. They wanted the soundbite. They wanted the tears. They wanted to know how it felt to send your mother and father to federal prison for 20 years. They shouted questions that overlapped into a wall of noise. Imani over here, do you have any regrets? Is it true you hid millions from them? How does it feel to be the only one left? Are you going to visit them? I paused on the landing, looking down at them. I adjusted my oversized sunglasses, shielding my eyes. Jasmine had tried to use these people to destroy me. She had tried to weaponize public opinion to steal my life. Now the cameras were capturing the end of her story, not mine. Her face would be on the news tonight, but not for a brand deal. It would be a mugshot. I did not stop to speak. I did not offer a trembling lip or a false platitude about tragedy. Instead, I did something that probably confused them. I smiled. It was not the polite smile I used in boardrooms. It was not the tight smile I used at family dinners to hide my disgust. It was a real, genuine smile that started in my chest and warmed my face. It was the smile of a woman who had just dropped 200 pounds of dead weight. I walked down the steps, my heels clicking a rhythm of victory on the pavement. The crowd parted for me. They sensed that I was not a victim anymore. I was a survivor who had just nuked the island to kill the predators. At the curb, a car was waiting. It was not a rideshare. It was not my SUV. It was a sleek obsidian black Rolls-Royce Phantom, the kind of car that whispered power rather than screaming it. The tint was pitch black. The engine purred so quietly it was almost silent. The rear door opened before I even reached it. A hand reached out from the dark interior. It was a strong hand wearing a platinum watch that cost more than my parents' house. I took it and slid into the cool leather back seat. The door clicked shut, sealing out the noise of the reporters and the city. The silence was instant and luxurious. I turned to look at the man sitting beside me. He was handsome, successful, and looked at me with a reverence my father had never shown my mother in 30 years. He was the final secret, the one thing I had kept completely hidden from the vultures. They thought I was a lonely workaholic spinster. They thought I was easy prey because I had no one to protect me. They never knew I had him. "Hello, beautiful," he said, his voice low and comforting. "Is it done?" I leaned back against the headrest and exhaled a breath I felt like I had been holding since I was 16. "It is done, Julian. Drive." I sat in the back of Julian's car as we pulled up to the Department of Family and Children's Services building. It was a sterile brick structure that smelled of pine sol and broken dreams. This was the last loose end. The final piece of the wreckage I had to clear away before I could truly leave. Inside, the caseworker, Mrs. Alvarez, was waiting for me in a small office cluttered with files. She looked tired. Everyone in this system looked tired. "We have placed Marcus and Ashley's children in temporary foster care," she said, sliding a stack of paperwork across the desk. "Given the circumstances, the court will likely terminate parental rights within 6 months. As the closest relative, you have priority for placement. Are you willing to take custody?" I looked at the photos attached to the file. My nephew and niece, 6 and 4 years old. Innocent faces that did not yet know their parents were monsters. They had Marcus's eyes and Ashley's chin. I took a deep breath. "No," I said, my voice steady but heavy. "I am not taking them." Mrs. Alvarez frowned. "Ms. Jenkins, they are family. The system is overwhelmed. Children do better with kin. I know the statistics, Mrs. Alvarez, but you do not know this family. You do not know the poison that runs in this bloodline. If I take them, I bring the drama with them. Ashley will call from prison. Marcus will write letters. My parents will try to use them as leverage for appeals. They will grow up hearing stories about how their aunt sent their parents to jail. They will be poisoned against me before they even learn to read. I cannot save them by bringing them into the war zone." I pulled a checkbook from my purse, "But I will not leave them with nothing. I have established a trust fund. It will pay for private schooling, therapy, college, and a start in life when they turn 21. But it is contingent on them remaining in the system or being adopted by strangers. No contact with the Jenkins family. No contact with me. A clean break." Mrs. Alvarez stared at the check. It was enough to change 2 lives forever. She looked at me with a mixture of confusion and respect. "That is a very difficult decision to make." "It is the only decision," I said, standing up. "Sometimes you have to cut off the limb to save the body. I am saving them from us." I walked down the hall to the visitation room. I did not go in. I stood behind the one-way mirror and watched them play. They were building a tower with blocks, laughing, unaware that their world had just ended and begun again. I placed my hand on the glass over the image of my nephew's face. "I am sorry," I whispered. "I cannot be your mother. But I can be your benefactor. Grow up strong. Grow up away from us. Be better than we were." I turned away, feeling a tear slide down my cheek. I wiped it away before it could fall. I walked out of the building, leaving the last of the Jenkins legacy behind glass. I got back into the Rolls-Royce. Julian took my hand and squeezed it. "Are you okay?" he asked. I looked back at the brick building one last time. "No. But I will be." The auctioneer's rhythmic chant was the soundtrack of my liberation. I stood in the corner of the living room, watching strangers bid on the wreckage of the Jenkins dynasty. It was fascinating to watch the dismantling of a myth. To these people, the mahogany dining table was just a piece of furniture, a bargain to be won. To me, it was the battlefield where my father announced his bankruptcies and demanded my savings. To the woman bidding on the crystal vase, it was a lovely centerpiece. To me, it was the object my mother threw at the wall when I got into college on a scholarship instead of marrying a rich doctor like she wanted. I had given the auction house strict instructions. Everything goes. The furniture, the art, the clothes, even the silverware. I did not want a single teaspoon to remind me of the meals we ate in silence. When the final gavel banged, the total was substantial. My parents had expensive taste, even if it was funded by crime. The auctioneer approached me with a smile, handing me the preliminary receipt. "Where should we route the funds, Ms. Jenkins?" he asked, expecting me to give him my personal account number. I handed him a pre-printed slip of paper. "Wire every cent to the Safe Harbor Coalition," I said. "It is a non-profit that supports victims of financial abuse and domestic violence. Make the donation anonymous." He looked surprised, but I just walked away. It was poetic justice. The money my parents stole to maintain their image would now go to help the very people they would have preyed upon. I was not keeping their blood money. I was washing it clean. I walked through the empty house one last time. The echo of my heels on the hardwood was the only sound. The rooms looked bigger without the clutter of their egos filling the space. I wandered into the den, my father's sanctuary. The shelves were bare, stripped of his fake trophies and unread books. But in the bottom drawer of the built-in cabinet, I saw a corner of faux leather sticking out. I pulled it free. It was the family photo album. The heavy one Patricia used to show off to the church ladies to prove what a perfect, blessed family we were. I opened it expecting to feel a pang of nostalgia. I expected to feel sad. Instead, I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. I flipped through the pages. There was Marcus accepting his diploma, smiling that arrogant smile. There was Jasmine winning a beauty pageant holding a bouquet of roses, and there was the family Christmas portrait from 1998. Everyone was smiling. But where I should have been standing there was nothing, just a jagged white void. I stared at the image. Someone had taken a pair of scissors and physically excised me from the memory. I flipped the page. My high school graduation photo, cut out. My sweet 16 party, cut out. Even in the background of casual candids, my face had been scratched out with a ballpoint pen until the paper tore. They had not just tried to kill me last week, they had been erasing me for years. They kept the idea of me the daughter who paid the bills, but they hated the reality of me. I was a ghost in my own history. A placeholder they tolerated only as long as I was useful. Seeing the violence of those scissor marks hurt more than the gun to my head. It was a quiet, simmering hatred that had lived in this house right under my nose. I walked over to the stone fireplace. It was cold and empty, just like this house. I tossed the heavy leather book onto the iron grate. It landed with a thud, the pages splaying open to reveal the holes where I used to be. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a box of matches. I struck one, watching the flame dance on the tip of the wood, yellow and blue. I did not hesitate. I did not cry. I dropped the match onto the dry paper. The fire caught, instantly curling the edges of the photographs. I watched as the faces of my tormentors blackened and blistered. I watched Marcus's smile turn to ash. I watched my mother's eyes melt away. I stood there until the entire book was nothing but gray flakes rising up the chimney. I was not in that book anymore. I was free. 6 months later, I found myself sitting in a quiet French bistro in Midtown, waiting for a client to arrive. The sunlight streamed through the window, warming the white tablecloth. I felt peaceful. My life was finally my own. I had a new firm. I had Julian. I had silence. But the past has a way of echoing even when you think you have soundproofed the room. A shadow fell across my table. I looked up expecting to see a waiter with the specials. Instead, I saw a ghost. It was Jasmine. But it was not the Jasmine I remembered. The girl standing before me was not the polished influencer with the ring light in her eyes and the designer clothes on her back. She was wearing a stained black apron and sensible shoes that looked worn at the heels. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and her face was scrubbed clean of makeup, revealing dark circles and a dull complexion. She looked tired. She looked ordinary. She held a water pitcher in her hand, and her knuckles were white as she gripped the handle. She froze when she realized who she was serving. The water pitcher shook in her grasp, the ice clinking against the glass. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out at first. She just stared at me, as if I were an apparition. "Imani," she finally whispered. Her voice was small and broken. It lacked the performative sweetness she used to use for her followers. It was just raw human regret. I did not gasp. I did not stand up. I did not make a scene. I simply looked at her with the same polite detachment I would offer any stranger. I saw the name tag pinned to her apron. It said Janet. She was using a fake name. Maybe to hide from the scandal. Maybe to hide from herself. "I am so sorry," she rushed out, the words tumbling over each other. "Imani, please. I have no one. Mom and Dad are gone. Ashley is gone. I am all alone. I am trying to do right. I am working double shifts. I am going to community college. I just want my sister back. Please say something. Yell at me. Hate me. Just do not look at me like you do not know me." I felt a flicker of pity in my chest. It was a dangerous spark. Pity was the door they always used to break back in. I remembered her on the stand telling the world how my parents planned to kill me. I remembered her laughing in my videos while I paid her rent. I remembered the betrayal. I picked up my menu, my movements slow and deliberate. I did not make eye contact. I did not acknowledge her apology. I treated her exactly as she deserved to be treated, not as a sister, not as an enemy, but as a waitress. "Sparkling water with lime, please," I said, my voice cool and even. Jasmine flinched as if I had slapped her. A single tear escaped and rolled down her cheek, leaving a wet track on her skin. She stood there for a long, agonizing moment, waiting for me to break, waiting for the old Imani to surface and save her. But that Imani was gone. She nodded once, wiping her face with the back of her hand, and poured the water. The meal passed in silence. She served me with efficient, trembling hands. She refilled my glass. She cleared my plates. She hovered nearby, hoping for a glance, but I gave her nothing. I ate my lunch in peace, reading a report on my phone. When the bill came, I pulled out my black card. I signed the receipt with a flourish. The bill was $40. On the tip line, I wrote $1,000. It was not a gift. It was not charity. It was a severance package. It was a message that said, "I have everything I need, and you have nothing I want." I stood up and gathered my purse. Jasmine came over to the table to collect the check. She looked down and saw the number. Her breath hitched. She looked up at me, her eyes swimming with fresh tears, her lips trembling. "Imani," she choked out, reaching a hand toward me. I did not stop. I walked past her without breaking stride. I pushed through the heavy glass doors and stepped out into the bright, noisy street. I did not turn around, but in the reflection of the window, I saw her collapse against the hostess stand, burying her face in her hands as she wept for the sister she had sold for likes and lost forever. The evening lights of Atlanta stretched out below us like a sea of diamonds, but for the first time in my life, I did not feel like I was drowning in them. I stood on the balcony of the penthouse, my penthouse, the one I had fought to keep, the one I had protected from the vultures. The air was cool and crisp, smelling of jasmine and expensive wine. I turned back toward the living room where Julian was sitting on the white velvet sofa. He had the wedding guest list spread out on the coffee table. He looked concerned. The furrow between his brows deepened as he tapped his pen against the paper. I walked inside, sliding the glass door shut behind me, cutting off the hum of the city. I sat down next to him and rested my head on his shoulder. He smelled of sandalwood and safety. He was the only man who had ever looked at my bank account and not seen a target. He saw me. "What is the matter?" I asked, running my hand down his arm. "You look like you are trying to solve a calculus equation." Julian sighed and dropped the pen. "It is the seating chart, Imani. We have a problem. My side of the aisle is overflowing. I have cousins, aunts, business partners, my old fraternity brothers. We are going to have to add rows." "But your side." He stopped. He did not want to say it. He did not want to hurt me. "My side is empty," I finished for him. He nodded slowly, reaching for my hand. "It is not just empty, Imani. It is barren. You have Harrison, your lawyer. You have a few colleagues from the firm. You have your old college roommate. But the first two rows, the rows reserved for the parents and the siblings, they are blank. We can fill them. I can have my cousins sit on that side so it looks balanced in the photos. I do not want you to look out at the ceremony and feel alone." I looked at the diagram. The empty boxes where Desmond and Patricia Jenkins should have been. The empty line where my maid of honor Jasmine should have stood. The missing space for Marcus and his children. To anyone else looking at this paper, it looked like a tragedy. It looked like a bride who was unloved and unwanted. But I closed my eyes and imagined the alternative. If they were coming, this room would not be quiet. My mother would be screaming about the flower arrangements, complaining that lilies were too cheap, and demanding orchids we did not need. My father would be cornering Julian in the kitchen, trying to pitch him a fraudulent investment scheme or asking for a loan to start a business that did not exist. Marcus would be drunk by noon, hitting on the bridesmaids and stealing gifts from the card table. Ashley would be judging my dress, whispering to anyone who would listen that I looked fat or that the diamonds were fake. Jasmine would be live streaming the vows, making my sacred moment about her subscriber count. It would be a circus. It would be a nightmare. It would be a performance where I was the prop and they were the stars. I opened my eyes and looked at the empty spaces on the paper. I did not see absence. I saw peace. I saw a ceremony where the only tears would be happy ones. I saw a reception where I did not have to hire security guards to watch the exits. I saw a day that belonged to me and the man I loved without the shadow of a debt or a threat hanging over the altar. I picked up the pen and drew a line through the empty boxes. I crossed them out with a firm, steady hand. "Do not move your cousins," I said softly. "Leave the seats empty. Let them be a reminder of what I survived. Let them be the space where I can finally breathe." Julian squeezed my hand, his eyes searching mine for any trace of grief. "Are you sure? You are not sad that they won't be there to see you walk down the aisle?" I looked at the man who would never ask me to set myself on fire to keep him warm. I looked at the quiet luxury of the home I had built. I thought of my family sitting in concrete cells far away from my joy. I shook my head and smiled a smile that reached all the way to my soul. "I am not sad, Julian. I feel relieved." It was a Tuesday afternoon when the ghost of my past tried to claw its way back into my present. I was sitting in my home office reviewing the quarterly projections for my new firm when my personal cell phone buzzed. It was not a client. It was not Julian. The screen displayed a number I did not recognize, but the caller ID sent a chill down my spine. Federal Correctional Institution, Talladega. I stared at the phone. My hand hovered over the decline button. I had every right to send it to voicemail. I had every right to block the number and never look back. But curiosity is a powerful force. I wanted to know. I wanted to hear what a man sounds like when he has lost his kingdom. I wanted to hear the voice of the monster now that his teeth had been pulled. I slid my thumb across the screen and put the phone to my ear. A robotic female voice greeted me. "You have a prepaid call from an inmate at a federal prison. To accept, press 1. To decline, hang up." I pressed 1. The line clicked and hissed with static, and then I heard breathing. It was ragged and wet, like someone who had been running for a long time and had nowhere left to go. Imani. It was my father, but it did not sound like Desmond Jenkins. The booming baritone that used to command attention at church dinners was gone. The arrogant, confident tone he used when he demanded money was replaced by a thin, reedy whisper. He sounded old. He sounded broken. "Hello, Desmond." I said, my voice cool and professional. "Don't call me that," he wheezed. "I am your father." "You lost that title in a courtroom 3 months ago," I replied. "Why are you calling me?" There was a pause on the line. I could hear the background noise of the prison, shouting men, clanging metal doors, the sounds of hell. "I need help, Imani," he said, and the desperation in his voice was thick enough to choke on. "It is bad in here. You do not understand. The food is inedible. The blankets are thin. I am an old man. I have arthritis. I cannot sleep on this metal cot. I need things. I need to buy extra blankets from the commissary. I need soap that doesn't burn my skin. I need soups." He was begging. The man who wore velvet smoking jackets and drank expensive scotch was begging for instant noodles and cheap soap. "I have no one else," he continued, his voice rising in panic. "Your mother is in a different facility and she won't write to me. Marcus is in maximum security. Ashley hates us. You are the only one on the outside. You are the only one with money. Please, Imani, just put a few $100s on my books. Just enough to get me through the winter. I am your flesh and blood. You cannot let me rot in here like this." I listened to him beg, and I felt absolutely nothing. No pity, no anger. Just a vast, empty silence where my love for him used to be. He still did not get it. He still thought he could manipulate me. He still thought my purpose on this earth was to make his life comfortable. You tried to kill me for an insurance policy, I said, my voice flat. You watched a man put a gun to my head and told him to pull the trigger so you could save yourself. And now you want me to buy you snacks. Imani, please, he sobbed. I am sorry. I was scared. I am your daddy. You are a stranger, I said, and I do not send money to strangers. But I have nobody, he cried. Who am I supposed to call? Who is going to help me? I pulled the phone away from my ear. I looked at the end call button. I thought about the sister he had favored for her entire life, the golden child he had protected while he sacrificed me. Call your precious daughter, I said. I tapped the red icon ending the call. I then opened the settings menu and blocked the number permanently. The silence returned to my office, and it was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. The sliding glass door clicked shut behind me, sealing out the soft jazz music playing in the living room. I stepped to the edge of the balcony where the iron railing felt cool and solid beneath my hands. The city of Atlanta sprawled out before me, a vast ocean of glittering lights and moving traffic. From this height, the cars looked like blood cells moving through the arteries of a giant living thing. It was beautiful. It was chaotic. And for the first time in my life, I felt completely separate from the chaos. I held a bottle of vintage Pinot Noir in my hand. It was a 2015 vintage, the same year I got my certification. The same year I bought my parents that house they eventually lost. I poured the dark red liquid into a delicate crystal flute. The sound of the wine splashing against the glass was crisp and clean. It did not smell like bitter almonds or bleach. It smelled like dark cherries and oak and hard-earned success. I took a sip, letting the complex flavors settle on my tongue. It tasted like victory. I thought about the little girl who used to hide in her closet with a flashlight doing her homework, while her parents screamed about money downstairs. I thought about the young woman who worked 3 jobs to pay off her brother's debts, thinking that if she just worked hard enough, they would finally be proud. I thought about the daughter who sat in a diner and realized her parents were selling her to a cartel. That girl was gone. She had died in that courtroom so that this woman could live. Julian was inside waiting for me. I turned my head slightly and saw him through the glass. He was laughing at something on the television, his face relaxed and open. He was not plotting. He was not calculating what he could take from me. He was just being. That was what real love looked like. It was not a transaction. It was a sanctuary. I looked back at the skyline. Somewhere out there in the dark, under the cold fluorescent lights of a federal prison, my family was sleeping on thin mattresses. They were probably dreaming of the past, dreaming of the days when they had a golden goose named Imani who laid eggs on command. They were angry. They were bitter. They were blaming me for their downfall. Let them blame me. Let them tell their stories to the cell walls. I was no longer the villain in their narrative, nor the victim in my own. I was the author of a new story, one where the protagonist saves herself. I raised my glass toward the city, toward the horizon, toward the future that was finally wide open. The wind caught my hair, blowing it back from my face. I felt light. The heavy burden of genetic obligation that had crushed my spine for decades had finally snapped. I stood tall, not because I was strong, but because I was unburdened. I looked at the wine swirling in the glass, dark as blood, but pure as water. They always told me that family came first. They told me that you never turn your back on your own. They used those words like chains to bind me to their sinking ship. But they were wrong. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of freedom. It was sweeter than any perfume. I spoke the truth to the night air, my voice steady and final. Blood is not thicker than water. Love and respect are the bonds that bind us. I am Imani, and I am free. Imani's story teaches us a powerful lesson: shared DNA is not a license for abuse. We often cling to toxic relationships out of a misplaced sense of duty, believing we must save family members who refuse to save themselves. However, true family is built on mutual respect, safety, and love, not manipulation or financial exploitation. Imani proved that setting boundaries or cutting ties completely is not an act of betrayal. It is an act of survival. You are not a resource to be used. You are a person to be cherished. Never set yourself on fire just to keep ungrateful people warm. If you believe your peace is worth more than toxic loyalty, drop a like and subscribe for more stories of justice.